We don't have a gavel tonight, so this is what we do. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Laura Lee, please call the roll.
Stu Boyd.
Here.
Denise Chapman. Lori Goble.
Present.
Don Kirk.
Here.
Alexandra Lessem.
Here.
Nancy Rumfeld.
Here.
Mike Schultz.
Here. All right. Nancy, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we actually know where the flag is. Sometimes when we have study sessions, we're not quite sure where the flag is.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Board, hopefully you've had the opportunity to look at the agenda, and I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second
All right. We have a motion and second. Any discussion on the agenda before we vote? Okay. Laura Lee, please call the roll.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Denise Chapman. Lori Goble.
it. Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Alexandra Lessem.
Aye.
Nancy Rumfeld.
Aye.
Mike Schultz.
Aye. All right. So the motion on the agenda passes 6-0. We're going to move then to agenda item number 3, which is the school presentation done by students and staff from Lorraine Edmondson. So I'll turn it over to either Dr. Polka or John or whoever is going to take it from here.
All right. Good evening, Mr. President, Dr. Heller, and members of the board. I am Dr. Carmen Polka. I'm the Executive Director of Elementary and Early Childhood Schools, and I am proud to present to you John Berg and his students, and I think some parents that are eager and ready to present to you for their school presentation. And then right after, John Berg will be sharing his work with his school unified improvement plan.
Thank you, Dr. Polka. Mr. President, distinguished board, Dr. Heller and cabinet, thanks for being here tonight at Edmondson Elementary. We're excited. We hosted you, I think, 2 years ago in January, and we're going to do it a little bit different this time. I wanted to hear directly from some of the students, and so we have 3 of our friends here. We have Camden, Landry, and Lucille, 4th, 3rd, and 5th grade. And they're going to talk to you a little bit about an activity that students engage in called Blackout Bingo, where students do some activities outside of the classroom at home. And so we're going to start with Landry, I think, right? And you're going to talk a little bit or Camden, right? Camden's going to go first? Okay. You go ahead and talk loud, and they'll ask you any questions they might have.
Blackout bingo is something you get from your teachers, and it has a bunch of fun activities and educated activities to do when you're home.
And is that a sample? Okay. And then Landry, do you want to talk a little bit? And talk loud.
Blackout bingo has new things every month in your activities, so you don't have to be doing the same thing every month.
You see it?
Blackout bingo makes sure you're outside of the house, hanging out with friends and family, using your creativity. It has some math activities, reading activities. Yeah.
And then what's the objective of the Blackout Bingo? What are you trying to do over the course of the month?
You try to get all the boxes filled, and then you get an extra recess.
Are there any questions for any of the girls here? We do have a sample one here, but are there any questions from the board? Yes.
So, to the young ladies, which, I guess, is there an activity or one that's maybe within the last month, what was your favorite activity on your Blackout Bingo?
Finishing a book, because it counts for your reading world and your blackout.
So double.
Smart kid. One.
What about you?
Favorite?
Do you have a favorite, Landry?
December. From December. Your bingo.
You want to take a minute, or do you know? Okay. Lucille, did you have a favorite?
My favorite was making cookies with a family member.
Do you have any to share?
I ate them all.
We do have a few other students that are going to talk a little bit about our reading log process and how that's impacted some of their learning and reading from outside. Are there any other questions for our girls here?
You did great.
Okay.
You did.
Thank you.
I believe you said it gets you outside away from the what kind of activities does it have that gets you
It
outside?
has you do like a jog with a family member or just walk around your neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
The goal though is to kind of get you out of the house, get you
Yeah.
hanging out with friends, not looking at screens, for example, or watching.
Or like shovel snow or like rake leaves.
That's great.
Maybe there'll be snow tomorrow.
You had ones that you couldn't do or that were really hard to do?
Maybe shovel snow this month because we haven't gotten really much any snow.
That's a good answer.
For me, it was probably to read a whole book.
It was,
What was the book that you read?
39 clues.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
This is
you.
great.
We're going to have you sit down.
Thank you.
We have two other students that would like to present here. This is Willie, who's in 4th grade, and Dr. Heller, you might remember our friend Leah from 5th grade, as she's on the superintendent's
Sure do.
advisory
Sure do.
committee, all right? So they're gonna talk a little bit about the reading log process that we have that students take home, and I'm gonna let them kind of explain how it works, and they'll answer any questions you may have, okay? So Willie, you ready to go?
Hi, my name is Will, and I'm in 4th grade. I read at home by myself and sometimes with my baby brother, who is 3. And I fill out the reading log, and my mom puts her initials on it. And the time I've read and the book I've read reading, I turn it in to my teacher on Friday, and it goes to Mr. B. Mr. B shares the top readers on announcements, and he shares the minutes and hours that students have read. I like doing the reading log as it teaches me how to read more, and I'm not on the device when I'm reading a book.
Thank you, Willie. Leah, do you have anything to add?
Kind of like Billy said, you get your reading log every Friday so that you have it over the weekend and the week to fill it out. So you put the date that you read the book, how many minutes, and then what book, and after that your parents sign it, and then at the end of the week on Friday, you get to turn it in, and sometimes in assemblies you get fun prizes or prizes from your teacher. And sometimes, if you're the top reader, if you've read a lot, you get your name called on the announcement, which is kind of fun because,
One thing I'd like to add about these two students, I'm being a little modest, but Willie is our top reader this year so far. He's read over 2,220 minutes, which is 37 hours. That's through November. We don't have December's data yet. And Leah has read over 1,485 minutes through November, which is almost 25 hours. So I wanted to make sure you were
Board, any questions or comments for the two students? I do have one, but I'm going to present mine last, so go ahead, Mike.
First off, great hair, by the way.
I was going to say the same thing.
I'm jealous, as you could see. I did not do what you can do. So. And I'm really excited to see that you're encouraging reading. I think that's a great thing. So tell me I just was curious, what are your favorite, what types of books do you gravitate to you like to read the most?
like Dogman and I Survived.
Oh, those are cool.
I like fantasy books. I'm reading a book right now called Wilder Lore that has magical creatures.
What fun. It's fun.
Anybody else before I ask Will my question? Laurie, you have a question? Go ahead.
So how does, it sounds like you two are like the top readers, so how does that, do you have friendly competition going with some of your friends then to see who can read the most?
No.
No? And on average, how many books do you read a week?
Probably like 2.
That's great. How about you?
Probably 1 because some of the books I read are longer.
They're a little bit longer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, Will, here's my question for you. You mentioned that when you're reading, you're actually using a book as opposed to a device. Have you ever read a book on a device?
Yes.
Okay. Which do you prefer?
Probably like a computer or something, like a phone.
Do you prefer that to actually holding the book and actually having the book?
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Anybody else?
That's great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great job.
Good to have you. And then we have one parent that would like to talk to you briefly, okay, if you have just a minute, okay? Samantha Cruz.
Continue to the room, then arrive.
You made it.
It's getting very detailed now.
This is Marta Cruz, and she is a parent of a kindergarten student, Nathaniel back there. He didn't want to come up, but Nathaniel is a multilingual learner, and Marta Cruz had shared some things that we felt were pretty powerful. We just wanted her to kind of talk with the board about her experience as a parent of a multilingual learner and some things that we're trying to do to help her child develop his language more completely and that type of thing.
Sorry. The book that helped my husband get involved are these pamphlets that Ms. Patron makes. It's little, like 4 pages, and you know, after work, like parents, you know, moms and aunts are tired and stuff, but this one's made it so much easier, like for us that my husband's first language is Spanish. It was so easy, the words were so like easy for him to read to him, so he got involved in that. So he's getting involved with him with those little pamphlets that Ms. Patron did, and that's awesome. That's how I'm grateful for that, because that's how he got involved with us. And the other one is the Miss, forgot her name, that has it's help with the classes that have books in Spanish and English, which that makes it easier for them to learn both languages at the same time, because when they're growing up with 2 languages at home, they get confused a little bit. So you have to like re-explain everything, and then they get confused. So we have to constantly be speaking both languages. And reading books makes it much easier. Having books here at school with that are bilingual has helped a lot tremendously. Also, we had a class that the librarian came from Dublin, and she gave us story time with all the students. And I liked it because a lot of parents that were only Spanish speaking came by, because it was in both languages. It was bilingual. So whenever there's an activity that's bilingual, more parents that speak only Spanish get more involved, you know. And I love it that they welcome us on the PTA meetings. We're part of it too. They bring a translator for people that don't speak English, and it makes it easier for us to get more involved. Because a lot of us want to get involved, but if there's not resources of translation, you know, I mean, like, it's like we can't, and I speak both languages, but I'm not going to be translating, because then I'm not going to pay attention, you know, honestly. So it makes it much easier when the school provides the person that translates, and then we can get more involved. And I'm thankful for them to welcome us on the PTA meetings. And every activity, actually, they send us to see if we want to come and, you know, get us involved. And I love that. about this school. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can
Yeah,
Do you have any questions?
I'm so excited to hear this because I know, and I can't remember when it was, but I remember being at Lago Vista when we went there for a community visit. And that was one of the things that came up, that if the district could provide books in both, English and Spanish, it would help the students learn a lot. And so I think that's great. It's also interesting because I've been reading that book by Dr. Constantine on family engagement, and that's one of the parts he really goes into is that for the non-English speaking families, if you want to get them engaged, you need to find ways so that they feel comfortable because they know that someone's going to be there that can converse with them. And he talked about how they'll make name tags or have signs up that says I speak Spanish, so that you know who to look for in the different events. So I think that's really great, and I think that will help a lot when your son will be able to make a lot of money because he'll be able to speak both languages.
Well, and I hope that he gets the second language, Spanish, really good, and then he can learn another extra language. Because now it's two is actually just the minimum. Like you need more than two. So I'm going for that. And another thing is that Michelle is like really good to communicate with us out there. When she sees us out there, she's like, "Oh, we're gonna have a meeting and we're gonna have this," and she makes it easier for us to get more involved. And then I'm starting to talk to other moms. And they're like, oh, they're going to have a translator, and this and that. So that makes them more confident to come to the PTA meetings and the events that we're going to have, the school has.
We should organize to come to one of our meetings at the board room and speak.
Yeah, next time, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take this break.
Before we move away from the focus on Lorene Edmondson presentation, I would just like to share with those of you in attendance, the board members and the rest of you, I grew up in the Loveland Berthoud community, and Lorene Edmondson was my high school choir director. And whenever I'm in this school, I always feel her presence. And I'm always conscious to sit up straighter than maybe I did in other schools because while she was directing the choir, she would walk among us, and if somebody was like doing this kind of thing, it was a tap, usually on the chair in front of us or on the hand, sit up straight. And so I just thought I would share that little bit of personal information with you about my relationship with the namesake of your school. And she was an outstanding educator. When I graduated from college, we attended the same college, not at the same time. They asked for someone to be her, to accompany her around to the different events at UNC. And I volunteered to do that, and so I got to know her in a completely different way. And so I just wanted to share that with you. Coming here is always a joy for me, in addition to what we're going to learn and what we've already heard from the students, because I feel Miss E's presence here, and I will sit up straight. All right. Pardon?
You're an inch taller tonight.
Yeah, I'm an inch taller than I usually am, absolutely. So thank you for, John, for orchestrating the presentation for the students and parents who came for that. So we're going to move then to agenda item 4, actually 4.1, which is the Lorene Edmondson Elementary School 25-26 School Unified Improvement Plan. And I'll turn that over to whoever is going to start with the presentation.
Yeah, John will be leading us through the presentation around the improvement plan.
Okay.
Mr. President, School Board, Dr. Heller and Cabinet, thank you again for being here tonight. We really appreciate that. We always enjoy hosting. And so we are going to be presenting our School Unified Improvement Plan to the board for your approval, and if the board approves at their next meeting, the plan will be submitted to CDE for approval as well. And then the school performance framework includes academic achievement, academic growth, and CMAS participation, and that's the cover page right there. Initially, Edmondson was given a turnaround status for the year. We requested a reconsideration from the state, and that was granted. We are now priority improvement status year 1. However, our percentages remain the same. So on that previous slide, you saw that we were at 32.5%, which puts us in turnaround. After the request to reconsider, we moved up, I believe, 3 percentage points into the priority improvement rating. As we did the root cause analysis, we found there's a need for improved achievement and growth scores in English language arts for our Hispanic and Latino communities, students, due to a lack of guaranteed and viable curriculum and literacy. A lack of student growth in English language arts and math in 4th and 5th grades due to lack of consistent professional learners, teams, meetings, and data conversations to drive instruction. And then a lack of favorable student perception of safety due to students reporting they feel disrespected on Panorama survey data. School staff will engage in literacy professional development related to the newly adopted benchmark literacy curriculum while implementing science of reading principles into literacy instruction. Other improvement strategy, school staff will participate in professional learning teams, meeting regularly with one another discussing student data, utilizing DeFore's 4 questions of the PLT to drive effective classroom instruction. And school-wide implementation of warm welcomes and student-created classroom agreements, along with continued implementation of the Character Strong SEL curriculum via Tier 1 instruction. Action steps. Thus far this year, our staff have attended up to 6 professional development trainings around our new benchmark literacy curriculum. This has also been implemented into each grade level with fidelity at this point. Yesterday, during our professional development day right here in this room, we had our multilingual department coordinator provide professional development on SIOP, which is the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. This is to help make content more accessible for our students identified as multilingual learners. And there is some research that shows it assists with students living in poverty too. And we're approximately 62% free and reduced lunch at Edmondson. And then 100% of our staff have implemented warm welcomes and posted co-created classroom agreements in each classroom. Staff are now working toward addressing what happens when a classroom agreement is broken with individual students by utilizing reteaching opportunities or a one-on-one conversation to that student as they re-enter the classroom. We'll continue to work with the All Learners Network, a research-based math instructional company implementing and utilizing research-based math instructional practices. We've had one meeting with our coach in September, and we have another one scheduled in February where she'll be working with classroom teachers at that time again. A few celebrations to look at for the beginning of the year. When we look at the Panorama survey data from fall 24 to fall 25, and we're looking specifically at school safety, there is an increase of 9% of student perception of school safety, so that's been a positive thing to celebrate. Overall, student attendance has improved approximately at 2.1% as a positive attendance rating. And then we've had a decrease in behavioral referrals, both in the classroom and to the office. And we've had a decrease in chronic student absenteeism thus far this year. Does the board have any questions about Edmondson's Unified Improvement Plan?
All right. Mike, I'll start the questions with you if you have anything or comments.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, or in a comment, kind of at the end. But the one question I have is maybe, I don't know if it's for you, Dr. Heller, but I read in there that there was some opportunity to tap into Title I funding for support. Is that just was curious because if that's federally supported, is that money at risk, or are we at risk of losing that?
We were very worried about it being at risk this summer. It did finally come in. As of right now, it's not currently listed as being at risk for next year, but think, like everything with kind of federal monies right now, we're all kind of sitting on the edge of our seats to see what might happen next. But we did have a real worry this summer that when there was a withholding of those dollars, but they did come in, title money did come through exactly as we expected them to come through as well.
And that's a resource kind of that you've tapped into.
It is a resource. So typically, kind of a guideline for Title I schools is approximately 80% of the title funds are spent on people, on personnel. For example, our SEL, our social emotional learning specialist salary is provided by that funding, and then 20% is for outreach and PD, professional development, conferences and training and that type of thing. We just recently got access in December to what's called carryover funds. Carryover funds come available. It's money that hasn't been spent and it's redispersed to the schools. And we got some additional funding that became available in December for some additional collaborative PD that our staff are going to do some after hours work on collaborative work around family engagement, communication with families, and then also we're finding a need to use some of it for some of the benchmark training with it being a new curriculum. Anything new, it's a lot for people the first year. So that's going to be earmarked for some collaborative planning between grade level teams and our instructional coach as well. So those are some title funds that were a positive thing, that were additional to what we initially got last year in the spring.
And one follow-up question. I read, because we were using a curriculum prior that was not, because I know the state has been making some changes to curriculum, and we're shifting to the benchmark, which is why not benchmark Adelante? Because I know that I was curious, because that one is the one that's more focused on Spanish, or are we using that, or did I just misread that?
So and maybe Carmen can speak, but we're using the Benchmark Advanced, which is general ed for all, and then in our building, and I think it's in the other buildings as well, we're using Benchmark Express is for our multilingual learners, and Benchmark for students on IEPs has a different subtitle.
Yes.
So what we have is Gen Ed, and then we have for our multilingual learners or intervention, and then we have one for students that have disabilities that are on IEPs, are the three that we have, but not specific for multilingual learners.
No, and the difference from our previous curriculum was we had somewhat of a one-size-fits-all with ReadyGen. And then as CDE also updated which curriculums are approved based on our science of reading, ReadyGen was no longer approved by the state. So with that new adoption, we did something different than we have done before, which was we adopted, as John mentioned, not only materials for our Tier 1 instruction in our classrooms, but we adopted materials for our English language learners. So our teachers that are teaching students that are multilingual learners have a paired curriculum, so it aligns with the Tier 1 Gen Ed curriculum. And what it does is it expands one of the topics within a unit, so they have a deeper dive. So it allows for more access to content-rich language. So we have that piece. We also have curriculum supports for our interventionists as well as our teachers of students with special needs. And then at our two schools that are our dual language schools, Trescott and Cottonwood, they do have the separate curriculum that is taught primarily in Spanish, so that they are receiving academic instruction in both English and Spanish. So theirs is different than the rest of the 14 schools. Does that help?
Yeah, maybe I could follow we talk more about curriculum.
Yes, and then we could maybe have Tiffany Jones here also as the director. So, okay.
In one comment, and then I'll yield my time. The one thing I would say is I just wanted to kind of leave it on a little bit of, or at least from my perspective, a positive, because I don't believe that just because, that this doesn't mean you have really good teachers, and it doesn't mean you don't have really good kids, and you're doing the best you can. I think, I'd like to, because I feel like sometimes, when we're setting policy, it's the siege mentality that comes in, and like we're under attack because of these plans and things like that, and I don't really look at it that way. I think our goal is to kind of be as supportive as we can to kind of help turn things around. But I don't want anything to, or at least that I say it from my perspective, to make it seem like I'm I'm being overly critical of the teachers and the quality of the staff and the commitment to learning, because I think it's really important that we maintain a real positive, a hopeful approach to all of these.
Mike, I appreciate your questions, first of all, and I appreciate your comments and your feedback, and I have confidence that we have the right people in front of kids. There's some things we have to tighten up, and I spoke about a few of those things, but I appreciate that feedback, and we're going to move forward together.
Cool, thank you.
Alexandra, Dawn?
I actually have a follow-up to Mike's question around the Adelante, even if you can't answer it tonight, which is like, should we? I mean, given that we're seeing that this is in your unified improvement plan, is there going to be a benefit of bringing the Adelante in, at least in some ways? So that's a question I have. Again, it's a new curriculum, and I know you guys are trying to figure that out.
Right.
But that's a question I have. And then I also appreciate that these are very foundational goals, right? Because you're looking to build long-term successes and not just get higher test scores by pushing the stuff for the test.
Right.
And I appreciate that, right? This is aligned with the district plan. It's aligned with previous years. I feel like I've seen a lot of this in there, right? And in tightening it up and spending the time to get better at something you're already working on, I think is a great, instead of adding another initiative. So thank you for doing that, because I see that all over this, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dawn.
Denise?
Yeah, it's one sentence, but students report they feel disrespected. Can you kind of drill into that? Like, is it teachers disrespecting other students? And what does that look like, and what are the...
It's typically it's student to student, not student to teacher. Our student to teacher relationships is pretty favorable. Students will report that they have good relationships with teachers, but it's a lot of it is verbal aggression or name calling, kind of thing like that. So we've actually dove into that a little bit with some of the work our counselors done in the classroom around, like, how do they define how do they find respect? How do they define it? Because last year we were kind of perplexed that we had warm welcomes at a pretty high rate. We had classroom agreements at a very high rate, like both over 90%. We're at 100% now, but they were still over 90%, and we were still seeing some of the lower response to the respect thing. And so we've dove into that a little bit to help to better understand how students define that, so that we can focus our instruction a little bit more on what that looks like. A lot of times, language I'll use with kids is safe body and safe words, or expected body, expected hands, and what's expected behavior in like a pro-social environment. And so part of it is drilling into that deeper, like, what does that look like, and how does a student define it as being disrespected? Well, he called me a name. So if there's 5 responses on the survey and they say some of the time, that's not favorable. Only the top 2 responses are favorable. So we want to make sure that we're not teaching to the test or telling kids what to say, but we want to have a clear definition of what respect is, and a clear understanding of how students interpret that. And I think that's partly has impacted our more favorable results, because I think there's more consistency there in how we're delivering the message and hearing what students are saying as well.
Lauren?
I guess my question is a little bit more general, because when I saw the breakdown on the academic achievement, where there were all the groupings and stuff, just going on Colorado revised statutes, that there shouldn't be any distinction or classification of pupils, because of race or color. And when we're talking about minority students and things, to get rid of the segregation, so to speak, or classification, and how, because this is from the CDE, and I'm just wondering how they justify doing it that way as opposed to some other ways. I guess
I
that's
certainly
maybe
can't,
more of a
certainly
question
can't
for
speak
you.
for CDE, but I can speak for what we're required to do, which is our students are reported out by various, race, ethnicity. Sorry, my mouth doesn't work tonight. Special education, different groups, and And when we have groups that are underperforming compared to their peers who are not in those groups, we do have a responsibility to figure out why is that, like, and what are we doing that might be causing that, or what are we not doing that needs to happen. So, yeah, where their CDE and the state statute are in conflict, I'll leave that to CDE and the state to figure out. We just have a responsibility to make sure we're meeting kids' needs, regardless of what groups or they may or may not be in.
Dr. Polka, you want to comment?
Yeah, I just want to elaborate to say that each school's school performance framework is unique because it is based on their school population. And within the frameworks, if the N size is too small, then that population won't be represented in their school performance framework. So if you pull up each school and look at them next to each other, you won't necessarily always see those disaggregated groups because it just depends on the population within the school also. So it doesn't quite answer your question, but just so you have that awareness, if you were to pull up, you know, if you get curious, you're like, I'm gonna read them all tonight, you might see some differences within the school performance.
You absolutely will see some differences, yes.
All right. Okay, Nancy?
If you could you go back to the root cause page? Yeah. So one thing, and it was really great that the mom was here because that kind of helped. So when I was reading through this, and maybe it's just the way my brain works. So I read that, you know, the big issue they called out was, you know, that the Hispanic population is performing, I don't remember the exact number, 2 times or whatever it was. And so when I would look at this, that's where I would always start with framing, like the question is, what is the problem? Well, the problem is Hispanic students, they're not, for whatever reason, they're not at grade level or, you know, proficiency. And then what's causing that, and then what's the fix? And so when I read this, and it's because probably I'm not an educator, and, you know, many people in the community, if they were to read this, that they might not also know what is the real problem and what are we doing now. Because of the parent that was here, it makes a lot of sense now because she's talking about, you know, the pamphlets that the teacher's making, which really is getting the dad involved, and the PTA in their translation, and having books in both English and Spanish. And so those are great solutions. But when you read something like this, for the non-edu-speak people, we're like, what does this mean we're doing? What does this mean? What problem we're solving? Does that make sense? Because I think it sounds like from that mom, I mean, you guys, that's a phenomenal thing that you guys are doing, and that's really exciting.
Yeah.
But it's not really reflected here. Does that?
Right. And I think part of it, not in this discussion, or not on this table here, but we talk about the lack of the guaranteed and viable curriculum, and with Benchmark being new, that's a step in the right direction, definitely. The PSYOP training that I talked about yesterday, and so I think you're probably familiar with like Envision, the math, and the ALN, and they talk about low floor and high ceiling, and the idea of the low floor in math is that every student that comes in, 25 students in the class, they all can access the math. It's not like we start out at a level where a third of the class doesn't understand what we're talking about. So that means like low floor, high ceiling, where all kids can look at a picture and they can interpret it, a math, and then say there's patterns of 3s or there's patterns of 5s or whatever the case is. The idea with the PSYOP training yesterday that we received from the multilingual department is similar in that it's a framework for reducing some of those barriers. And one thing that we find with students that are either multilingual learners or living in poverty, they don't have life experiences and context that a traditional middle class family might experience. So that's one reason why we've added extra money to get a second or third field trip for some of for all classes, all grade levels, because they're not out in the community. Maybe they've never gone to the zoo, they haven't gone to the museum, they don't go to the movies, they don't ride the bus or whatever kind of thing. So the idea with the PSYOP training is to give teachers some strategies, and I've allocated some money for that for them to start developing things better this second semester, but is to look at if we're looking at literacy specifically, and here's the literacy lesson, and if a child was a newcomer or a multilingual learner scoring at a lower proficiency like non-English proficient, which is NAP, it's like reading Russian. It'd be like if that was all in Russian, we would not have any context to that. So we went over strategies of, yesterday, just examples of they're talking about a box and she had a box. So she's pointing to the box and saying the word box in Spanish, and had an apple when she's talking about manzanas, which are apples and that type of thing. So the idea there is that we have to do a better job of reducing barriers. So part of what Marta Cruz talked about is doing that, where her husband can practice his English with their kindergarten child. That's one thing that goes home, but we need to do a more thorough job of that in the classroom, day to day with instruction as well. And then another thing we want to look at is, a student who may be a newcomer or has limited English proficiency, what does their day look like? They're in here at the STEM lab. This is part of our specials rotation, so they're in here once a week. But following that child around, and what does that day look like for them? Are they lost the whole day? Are they well behaved but they're not addressed because they're not causing trouble, but really they're not understanding things throughout the day because they don't have the context of the dozens of conversations that take place, in an educational environment.
And everything that you said, it sounds, it really is good. What I would, I guess, ask you to consider is maybe how to read it more in the presentation so that when, again, someone like me or Mike or Lori who don't live and breathe this, and even maybe, the parents can go to the website and pull it up. It's easy to see the issue, the problem is, the cause is barriers to learning, and our solution is like the pamphlet or,
Right.
things that I absolutely know that you guys know that this all encompasses everything you just said.
Right.
But when someone like me reads it, I'm like, I don't, it's just, it's just something to consider.
No, I appreciate that, Nancy. Thank you.
Great. Okay, any closing question before we move on to 4.2? All right, thanks, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Board. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Heller.
All right, agenda item 4.2 is information on the Peakview Academy 25-26 School Unified Improvement Plan. Okay.
All right, good evening again. I'm here to present, there you are. Vivian Panko, she is our interim principal at Peakview Academy at Conroe Ball. So she's gonna share her School Unified Improvement Plan as well.
Good evening, Mr. President, Dr. Heller, members of the board. It is my pleasure to be here. Like she said, I'm Vivian Panko. I'm the interim principal at Peakview Academy. And I'm here to share with you our School Unified Improvement Plan for this school year. So with just what John said, I'm here presenting this to you all and looking for your input. And then if this is approved, then we would move this forward and submit it to CDE. All right, this is our current school performance framework with a rating of priority improvement. Within that, we did, similar to what Edmondson did, we received an initial rating of turnaround status, and then we reviewed our kindergarten through second grade iReady data to see if that would change our framework, because the framework only holds 3rd through 8th grade for our building and their data. And so within that review, we were able to apply for request a reconsideration, and that reconsideration was granted, which changed our current performance framework status to priority improvement year 3, and our percentages with that stayed the same. And then we as a school are working with what we would call a turnaround partner within the Transformation Network. Stephanie Knox is who we work with, and we work very closely with her and have regular meetings, and she supports us in our work. All right, so we conducted a root cause analysis, and within that root cause analysis, we identified 2 primary root causes. So the first one being that our instructional practices were inconsistent. We were seeing a lot of different things across the board, and we really kept asking that question of why. Like, why are we seeing this? Why are we seeing this? Why are we seeing this? And drilling down, and what it drilled down to was that we lacked a structured system to really be able to say, this is the instructional strategy we need, we're going to implement it, we're going to monitor it, and we're going to refine it. And then the other root cause that we identified was that we had a low sense of belonging favorability rating for our learners and for our staff. And so within that, you may or may not be familiar that Peakview is in year 3, and we have had significant turnover rate from year 1 to year 2. We had a 30% teacher turnover rate. From year 2 to year currently 3, we had about 15%. That's still pretty large for a school. And so within that, we were seeing low ratings there. And then within those low ratings, this really drilled down as we kept asking why to the fact that we were seeing these low ratings might be related to limited consistent modeling of belonging-focused behaviors. And when you have limited belonging-focused behaviors in adults, you can sometimes see that in children as well. So then for our major improvement strategies, we have 2 of them. The first one is related to intentional planning and the implementation of what we call instructional sprint cycles. So sprint cycles are allowing us to focus for a quarter on a very high leverage instructional strategy and essentially get really good at it. So that includes like figuring out what the strategy is we're implementing, implementing it, monitoring it, and providing feedback, and doing that over and over and over in a really kind of fast, condensed method to increase our growth professionally and increase student learning successfully. And then the second major improvement strategy we landed on was to create a culture and communication framework that is school-wide. So there's 3 things we want to emphasize within this. One is two-way communication that is clear and accessible to all, no matter what maybe demographic group or disaggregate group they are a part of. And then collaboration was the second one, really focusing on like, is everyone part of a team? How do we move that forward? How do we make sure collaboration is purposeful? And then collective responsibility. And this one really drilled down to within that root cause of the whys, like what is lacking, and it came down to our communication, our follow through, and then our timeliness, right? Some of those things were not being followed through, so how do we build collective responsibility? And really, if we do those things, especially at the adult level, then we would in turn start to see the modeling of those belonging-based or focused behaviors, because we know if you don't feel like you belong, you often may not showcase those things, right? And so then in turn, increasing that with our students. Okay, and then our action steps. These action steps are for major improvement strategy 1, so our instructional sprint cycles. So when we launched our first sprint cycle, we focused on walkthroughs that would allow us to gather a baseline of where we are at in terms of our instruction. Within that, we did this with our turnaround partner from the Transformation Network, but we looked at 4 things. We were looking at student engagement, rigorous content, student thinking, and learning evidence. And within those 4 things, we landed on the fact that we really needed to focus on student thinking and increasing that opportunity in order to increase their engagement levels. And then the second action step there was then to determine what is our first sprint cycle. We landed on guided discourse, which guided discourse is the idea of when students are learning something, allowing them to really have like robust conversation about their thinking and their understanding of the content. And so once we landed on that, then we rolled out professional development. And within 1 quarter, we did 6 sessions of professional development on that topic. It was a lot, but our staff really appreciated it because it allowed them to get really clear on guided discourse and what we were looking for, and allowing them to prepare to implement it and then try it out, come back, review. And then within that last action step, it really goes into feedback cycles. So the purpose of the sprint cycle is once we launch it and implement it, we go in, we observe it, we provide feedback, and our feedback it's automatic. It's through a system that allows it to get to them, the teachers, really quickly. It gives them a clear next step of action, and then how and when coaching will be provided if there's additional levels needed. And then basically we repeat that process for quarter 3 and quarter 4. All right, and then the next set of action steps here is related to Major Improvement Strategy 2 with our communication and our culture framework. So one of the things we are doing is monitoring our sense of belonging perception data through monthly surveys. So we have a monthly student or learner sense of belonging survey is what we call it, and then we have a monthly effective staff support and culture survey. And through those two things, we are looking at those pieces that we talked about needing in our culture and communication framework. And then we review that data monthly as a leadership team and build out action steps based on that data for what will we do next. Then the second action step really is establishing our communication structures and our collaborative times. So we are utilizing professional learning teams, and we have made sure that every staff member, no matter if they are a direct like classroom teacher, is a part of some kind of team where they have that collaborative opportunity to learn from each other and to work together to support our school. And then the other piece there is we build in intentional times for staff reflection as well, for staff to reflect on, like, are we doing those things that we committed to and are working towards and are monitoring monthly. And then the last action step there being professional development related to sense of belonging. So we launched the year with warm welcomes and classroom agreements, and those are going really well for us. And taking that data that we're receiving each month now and figuring out what's next. Where do we go next? What are we doing? So, and then celebrations. At the end of Q1, we were able to see that we had 85% implementation of guided discourse within our sprint cycle, which was great to see. Teachers really took to it, and we're excited to give it a try. Yes, there's always still room to grow and still more we can do with that, and we're excited to see where we go. And then the bottom two, the middle one is about iReady reading data. So we saw an overall increase with the number of our students who were reading on level increasing from beginning of the year to middle of the year by 12.7%. And the number of students who were 2 or more grade levels below decreasing by 11.8%. And then with math, very similar. We had an increase in our number of students at grade level by 9.8% and a decrease in number of students who were 2 or more grade levels below by 11%. So, does the board have any questions?
Okay, Alexandra, we'll start with you this time. Questions or comments?
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about, you said Stephanie Knox, the transformation lady?
Yes.
About sort of her role and how she helps you and where she comes
Absolutely.
from.
Yes. So Stephanie formerly was principal in Greeley, and she has a lot of strong knowledge in being in, say, a school that's in turnaround status and moving it forward. So then when she moved career, she moved into the Transformation Network, and it's a network within CDE that you can access, and it is somebody we've partnered with to be able to come in to our building. So she can come in, she comes in primarily monthly, and we do like walkthroughs, we check in on things, we review sprint cycle data, we plan for what's next. So she really comes alongside us. And then she also, though, with her team, can provide us professional development. So some of those 6 sessions, they came in and did professional development for us on a rubric that we would call the Get Better Faster rubric, which is really like if you enter into teaching fresh, like where do you start? And she also does professional development for like sprint cycle things that we focus on, or provides us all the resources that we need to then be able to provide that. And she really, I mean, she's a catch-all for a lot of things, and she's a fantastic resource for us.
All right, Dawn?
I was just gonna kind of pair what I said to John with what I see, like one of the big differences for the two of you is these sprint cycles. And what I appreciate about that is how, like, as you described it, right, the ability to focus and to say, with all these things that could be part of it and could be very overwhelming, and we could easily have all of our grades trying to do different things, by really focusing and doing one thing, prioritizing, getting good at it, and having an opportunity to really like dig in. I think that's a great way for us to build some skills and some standards. The other thing that I think is deeply insightful that is those numbers of turnover in staff. And in students as well, right? We knew bringing 3 schools together that the identity was gonna be, the culture was gonna be some of the places to do work. And you think about it, all of us have been the newcomer. And when you're the newcomer, it takes a special kind of environment for you to have a sense of belonging really quickly as the newcomer. It's not that it can't happen, but when 45% of the staff is new, that means that it's really hard for 45% of them to create that special sense of belonging if they're feeling it themselves and not realizing how many other people are, right? Like, you're creating a culture on the move, right? And so this feels like there's adding some intentionality to it, creating those foundational pieces to allow that space. And you're also doing it together, which also, like, I think the structure of that can really add to the sense of belonging because we're all on the same page, right? You're creating that. And that's hard to do given that people are professionals who came in. Kids were already 3rd graders, right? They were already in the thing. So they don't want to be like starting from scratch. This feels like a really good way to try to close those gaps that you're trying to close. So I just appreciate the approach to all of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that because it really was a lot of thought and intention in like, how do we do something differently than what we've been doing for 2 years with this constant turnover rate. So I appreciate your statements.
Okay, Denise.
Just building on what Alan was saying, I'm excited to see the whole split process. And it's, I mean, we've made lots of changes in where I work and recognizing the successes in the smaller increments is really important. So that everybody within your school community can see progress being made. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Lori?
Just checking if I had, you said there was a 30% turnover rate with the teachers the first year,
From
the
year
second
1 to year 2.
and then 15 from 2 to 3. Was there any, prior to bringing the schools together, was there any, I guess maybe looking at, maybe this is actually more for Dr. Heller, but was there any like looking at maybe like military schools? My grandsons who are, you know, on school, on base, where you have that huge turnover, where you have a lot of new people coming in, and maybe getting some tips from them, should this happen in the future?
I don't know if that's something they looked at when they went through this process of bringing these schools together, but I think that there is some things probably always to be learned from these schools who experience this on a regular basis, how they maintain a culture with that level of turnover.
And then was there any feedback? Did you follow up with the teachers? Did they go to other schools in the district or?
Sure.
And what was their reason? I guess I'm just curious
Yeah.
as to the reasoning.
Absolutely. So when Peakview was launched, it was a consolidation of 3 buildings into one. And essentially what happened staffing-wise was there was a conversation about if you are a non-probationary staff member and you want to go, you can go. If you are not a non-probationary staff member but there's room, you could go, right? And so there was then like a limited amount of hiring that happened. And within then that year, because we had people coming from being a traditional middle school and people coming from being a traditional elementary school, some people ultimately just chose, like, this is not for me, I don't love the K-8 model, right? Which the K-8 model is not for everyone, and that's okay. And then there were people who were like, I love this, like, I know this has room to grow and I'm gonna stay. And that was what a lot of it was, right? And year 1, like, that was clear. People were very honest. People were not like shielding from our perspective of why they were leaving. And then year 2, right, going into year 2, or year 3, I'm sorry, going into year 3 from year 2, it was really related to still some people saying, okay, I tried it for 2 years, like, this still isn't the fit I want. I miss a traditional elementary, middle, whatever that may be, and still doing that.
Can you explain the sprint cycle to the new kid on the block?
Sure. Yeah. A sprint cycle really is taking a 1/4 of time, saying we're going to focus on this high leverage instructional strategy. So we chose guided discourse. Then we set out 4 implementation benchmarks for guided discourse. So saying to teachers, like, within the first 2 weeks, we want to see students being offered opportunities to have conversations within the observation time that we're in there, right? So we'd be there in there like 15 to 20 minutes. You'd hope to see that within that time. Then the second one was, okay, what is your structure you're going to offer to kids in order for them to really know, how do I do this? And then the third one was related to like how, when kids are stalled in their discussion, how do you extend that using universal prompts? And then the fourth one was, at the end, how does the teacher stamp the key understanding and wrap it back? So we gave those implementation benchmarks, then we launched the teachers into it, and then we as admin and coaches went around to classrooms and did observations and gave feedback related to that specific thing. And so then you track a lot of data really quickly related to it, and then you're able to determine, like, is this effective? What do we need next? Do we need more professional development? Oh, we're struggling in this implementation benchmark. Let's adjust here. And so you do that, and then once you're done with it, you can move into the next cycle of that.
Just didn't know if we were heading out to the track.
Yeah, right, so, thank you.
All right, Nancy.
Kind of along that same sprint cycle, because I was also like, what? So when you talk about the four steps, you're applying that to like maybe reading or math, and that's how you're, or is it
all contents?
All content.
Right, because no matter the content a child is in, so even if they're in art, right? If they're doing their art, they should still be able to discuss, like, why are we talking about 3D, drawings, and what do I know about that? And what am I thinking in terms of what I'm going to add to my drawing? So we really leveraged it for every content across the board instead of just like reading and math.
So you just, okay, that helps. I just, in the middle of the year, those are some great numbers. And I think because your turnover is kind of settled down, because I know kids, they just, it gets unsettling for them when they get attached to a teacher and then that teacher's gone. So I would think that this will start kind of really, a lot more positive result from everything that you're doing. So I think that's really good.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna want to continue on the sprint cycle.
I know, it's novel.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me. I mean, I'm a policy dork, so I appreciate kind of the feedback loop. The question I have related to that is kind of twofold. One is, if we're doing it under short periods of time, and you're kind of benchmarking it, but ultimately we're benchmarking against the long-term achievement of the kids. Mm-hmm. So you can't, I think how do you link that back to the broader, the
Sure.
improvement metrics that I think we're aiming to hit?
Yes, so that's a great question. I think there's multiple data points we can look at, right? When we think about like how do we track the progress incrementally right now versus the long term, and iReady is one of those pieces, right? Like we're seeing growth in kids and their understanding of the content, but there's also things that teachers are doing in their classroom to track data, whether it's formal or informal assessments to see. Something that we launched last year and our teachers are continuing to utilize it is the idea behind active monitoring. So active monitoring is not looking at like a score per se, but it's instead giving the kids like, this is the task to do and these are the chunked steps that you need to do to successfully complete it. And then going around and having like a path marked that you're ready to follow to be able to check and say like, yep, they're doing this, okay, now you're moving on to the second part of that and keep going. And so that's another piece of like formative data that if you do that and you do it really consistently and well, it gives you a ton of data and understanding in where that learner is in terms of their progress towards meeting whatever that standard might be. And then when you think about like, yes, we're doing this in a short cycle, but then we have a longer term goal. The idea behind the short cycle is not that once it ends, they stop doing guided discourse. That is 100% not what we would like to see. We would like them to continue to do guided discourse and really ingrain it in classroom culture and instructional culture within our building. And so checking back on that to make sure that that's still happening and watch the impact of it as we build in other pieces.
Well, and that's a good segue to my second question. And that kind of relates, I think, a little bit to the comment I made to Principal Berg earlier. And when I look at it, and please tell me if I'm wrong, I mean, you had 3 schools that came together, different cultures, work cultures, different leadership cultures, probably some conflict. I mean, not unexpected. I mean, it's been 3 years. And I do kind of get, I think it's important that, you know, for teachers and educators that work in schools, you know, you're dealing with kids that are with below the poverty line and a host of other issues, that it's not, you know, that we not make it feel like they're kind of under siege or like it's always, because I think it's important that, like, we retain good teachers and quality educators, especially in schools like that, and not feel like they're just under the microscope constantly. And so to that, my question related to that, and maybe it's broader for Dr. Heller and others, but, you know, what are we doing to kind of, because culture trumps policy. And what are we doing to kind of make sure that the culture from the educator's perspective is positive, that it's an attractive place to work, you know, that we're retaining good, you know, creating continuity, and that we're able to recruit good teachers even though the school is, you know, perhaps maybe more challenging than others.
Do you want to say anything
Yeah,
first? 'Cause
I mean,
have some
I can
things
speak to what we have been doing as Peakview, because so year 1 we hired, right, those couple additional people with really an intention of, we need people who know, like, how to teach, what they're doing, and move that forward. And what we saw was that those values maybe didn't align with the values that you really do need to have in order to change culture, right? Because culture is more dispositional, right? It's what is your disposition and what are you in the mindset of, like, participating in and being a part of and helping with. And so we then, from year 1 to year 2, really focused in dispositional hiring. Yes, if they had experience, that was great, that was wonderful, but it goes a long way to say, like, I'm here for this, I'm here for what might be hard, I'm here to learn and grow and to help change what this is currently. And that was tremendously impactful. Like, those people who had been in our building year 1 into year 2, they were like, there is palpable change. Like, you can feel it and you can see it, and even in year 2 to year 3. So that's one of the moves that we took as Peakview to make sure that we could bring people in who really wanted to be at Peakview.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, if I could, I mean, I'll say, I've had a couple opportunities to spend time at Peakview, walk through and actually go into classrooms with you. The discourse is happening. I have seen it in kindergarten classrooms where kids are having discourse about what they're learning. So it's happening, and it's great to see because it is a high leverage, high effect size strategy that has shown that when kids are having deeper level of discourse, they're going to learn beyond the surface level knowledge. And so we are seeing it happening in the building. I've seen it many times. But I also say, walking through that building, first day of school and other times since then, I would never have known that that was a school that has been having culture challenges prior to this year. It did not feel like a school that was having culture challenges. So there are some things that are happening there in terms of how that staff is coming together that I think you and the whole team should be proud of, because it is not the feeling that I saw when I walked through there at all. So that's good. In terms of the broader thing, I mean, we're having lots of conversations, I think, at the cabinet level around, even as we move into strategic planning, around the very thing that you said, which is, at the end of the day, this is a people business, right? We have to have a human, people first focus. We have to be people before strategy, culture before policy. All of those things have to be critical, and that includes really intentional feedback. When we talk about feedback loops, talking about feedback from a very specific standpoint where we're asking our employees questions on a really regular basis. So we've been having this conversation around this concept of leader rounding, where our leaders are regularly having short conversations with all of their employees to make sure we understand, like, what's going really well, but what are the things that are getting in your way, that are making it hard for you to do your job. And some of those but actually then taking all that information and being able to say across our system, what are we hearing and what can we actually do about it? So what are the root causes of some of these challenges we're seeing? What is causing somebody to choose to leave? Doing things like exit interviews when somebody does choose to leave to find out why. I think all of those things matter. I think our convocation this fall was a step in the whole district trying to come together, right? That fall kickoff where everybody was in the same place as part of trying to make the district feel like one district rather than 30 individual places, right? And so I think all of those things lead to this being a district that has got great places for people to work and great places for kids to learn. And I think the sense of belonging work I've been seeing happening at every campus. So when you see, you know, classroom agreements and these warm welcomes, you're seeing that at every single campus because that's been a real focus district-wide. While that impacts the kids' sense of belonging, there is an undeniable effect on the adults as well. As they are every day showing up to work saying, I'm going to intentionally be engaging with kids from a relational standpoint and with my peers from a relational standpoint, it becomes less about the job and it becomes more about this is someplace I own. I want to be a part of making this place great, which is what I've felt when I've been at Peakview so far. So.
Thank you. I have one final question,
Yeah.
and it's for you directly, kind of more directly to you,
Yeah.
Dr. Miller. So, I mean, obviously these are important, and it kind of reflects on both the Peakview and the Edmondson discussion. What is the feedback loop that we're going to get as a board,
Sure.
and what are the critical decisions that we're going to have to make, or you know, 3, 4, 6 months down the road,
Right.
to make sure that things are on track? Because I think that's.
I'm going to suggest that we hold that question and that perhaps that's something you can reflect on a little bit, maybe send us an answer
Okay, that's
in
fine.
writing so that we can move on to the next agenda item.
It's up to you.
Okay?
I have one.
Any more for Vivian?
How are these schools performing before we merged them?
Denise, would you repeat that?
Oh, how were the schools performing before we merged them? Was there a drop once they came together, or?
It was pretty comparable across the board because if you looked at school performance frameworks for the 3 schools, we were all circling around priority improvement at that time, and then that's what we landed with because we adopted Conrad Ball Middle School School Code, and then that came with that performance framework, which was comparable to where we were all at.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you to you and to John for
You both.
being with us tonight and providing all this information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll move on. And regarding Mike's question, is that
Yeah, I can-
something
yeah.
that you can
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
work on an answer and then share that with us?
Or if you want to just
We
discuss
talk
it
about
on
it
the
one-on-ones
21st.
or.
Yeah.
That's what, okay. All right, let's move on to agenda item 4.3, which is Loveland Urban Renewal Authority Board Representative.
Mr. Eversole is going to come up and give us a little bit of information, help to facilitate some conversation.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Heller, Bob Ebersole, Chief Financial Officer. And my presentation on the urban renewal is background in, I was the Deputy Director for the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, reporting to the Governor. Our agency oversaw urban renewal plans within Massachusetts. Urban renewal plans traditionally are in mill cities, old urban areas. Colorado does allow for urban renewal areas to include farmland. So therefore, anyone who's read any of the newspaper articles over the last many years will know the various discussions that have gone for the urban renewal for Centerra, shops at Promenade, Centerra South, the Foundry downtown Loveland. Urban Renewal Board in Loveland was just the city council. State law changed to provide that any overlapping taxing districts should have a seat on it, and therefore Thompson School District has a seat on it because some of the actions done by the urban renewal plan reduce the taxes available on a short-term basis, 25 years. That would no longer come to us. It affects the city and the county more than us, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The duties relating to an urban renewal entity has the ability to acquire and sell land, issue bonds for improvements. Probably the most controversial is tax increment financing over 25 years. Right now, an existing urban renewal area has a base tax existing. When you build on it, the tax that for the buildings is called the increment. Under an urban renewal tax increment financing, the entities continue to get the base tax. The extra tax does not go to these entities. It stays within the development to use to pay for development entities, the roads and sewers and other things like that. What I will say is there should be an analysis done on a but-for case. Is this needed to actually have the development happen? If it's not needed and the developer could afford to do it, generally it should not be done. That's my personal opinion. That's generally what's going on. That is an analysis done by the Urban Renewal Authority when it's done at that point. So what's the impact on us? So reduced taxes or future taxes that we could have got. As we've talked at some point on the Colorado state funding formula, our taxes go up, state aid goes down. Taxes go up, down, state aid goes up. So therefore, we theoretically say we're held harmless on that part. Now, if we didn't reduce the taxes and there was more state aid available, that shares that tax available with other school districts within the whole state of Colorado. So if we think beyond our borders, that's an important consideration. Our mill levy overrides, the first two, we are at the max already based on the fixed level that we have on that, but the third one could go up based on increased valuation because of the tax increment. And then bonds, we would raise more taxes to pay more debt if we had that taxing capability. Okay, that's a concern. Now we go to the other part. Within both the current Centera and Centera South, there is something called a school increment factor, where we actually get additional money, making up for the lost money on the mill levies, and that on the current Centera is about $2 million a year, and that is coming in to pay the bonds that were issued, not the bonds, the certificate of participations for High Plains School. So, and then in the Centera South, which is over 25 years going forward for now, we will start getting money in about 3 years when they expect to have development going on there. We are expecting to get about $25 million worth of funding from that part. I'm not going to say it's equal to what it would be if this development wasn't the tax increment funding was going to the other entity, but we as a school district are getting that funding. The city and the county don't have that additional funding coming from the urban renewal plan. Some of the roles of the Lura board are to deal with all of that, review development. Currently, the current Centera development, which started in 2002 and is going to end in a few years, there was a master financing agreement to deal with it. Multiple, 4 or 5 different entities, money going back and forth different ways, interrelationship. Many of those were developer controlled because when it was first started, there were not people within that district that could actually be residents to get on it. Now there have been. I happen to be a member of the BDW 1 Metro District, so I've been appointed to that. I've been elected to that. So the developer has control on that. There was an audit done that the city ordered and the lower board has approved, done by Ernst & Young. They did find some things that were not followed for requirements of the master financing agreement. There is discussion going on now whether those they were areas of discrepancies. They haven't used the word findings yet, whether there should be additional work to follow through to see if there's additional concern. So whoever is appointed to this board will be a member of that board. It's a governmental entity separate from us, and your responsibility is to represent the board, but also be on that board. So you will literally have 2 hats when you're on that board. And I would say that whoever is appointed, I will certainly be willing to be a resource to whoever is appointed at that point. Any questions on what the duties might be?
I'm going to ask the first question. And my question is about Exhibit A. If you want to bring that up, Laura Lee.
The bylaws?
It's part of the section entitled Laura Appointment of Laura Board.
So, yeah, that one.
There's actually the, there you go.
Yeah, scroll, there's that exhibit.
Yes, I think it's toward the bottom of that. Okay, so my question is, I'm wondering why Thompson School District is not listed in Exhibit A, taxing districts, when Poudre School District
I
is.
thought I'd seen it at the top.
Or did I miss it?
I thought it's at the top.
I don't think it's there.
So those are the other overlapping taxing districts. And since we have a seat on the board, they don't have to be listed there. So the rule was that they needed to have the two school districts. It was decided that since we had more of the land area involved, that Thompson School District would be the school, and all the other entities would work together to see who was going to represent all the other taxing entities. So certainly the city's on the board, the county's on the board, we're on the board representing us and effectively Poudre, because they've got a small one that's within the urban renewal area. And the other districts that are listed there are for information for how they're affected as well.
All right, so we're on that board representing Thompson and Poudre, is that what I understand you to say?
The way they described it is that they said that the schools should be represented, and it was decided back then that Thompson would be the one to be
I
the one
understand.
represented.
Okay.
Who
Thank
made
you.
that decision, I don't know, I haven't
Yeah.
found that out yet.
All right, thank you, that answers my question. Dawn, we'll start questions with you.
I wanna make sure I understood what you just said about the Centerra South numbers. Is it 25 million over the 25 years, so like approximately $1 million a year, or was it 25 a year? Cause that's a whole different
No,
ballgame.
it's 25 million over the entire period, but it won't start until buildings are actually built on the entity, and that the taxes that would have been there would come to us. It ramps up, and they have a projection, first year would be about 300,000, and then it gets up to $1 million, $1.5 million later.
Awesome, thank you for that. I figured that was the case, but I did not want to assume, cause it would be awesome if it was 25 million a year.
That's right.
We'll take it.
Right. Thank you.
All right, Denise. Lori? Nancy? Okay, if you don't have a question, you don't have a question. Mike?
I, of course, have questions.
No sprint cycle here.
I have a lot of experience with urban renewal, with tax increment finance, both kind of in my role, my previous role at the city, and my current role professionally, and amongst half dozen states, and so I'm very familiar with kind of the tool and how it works, and kind of understand, but I think one of the questions I have, and maybe it's not so much for you, Bob, but it's really more for the board, it's I think you made the point at the end, ostensibly whoever gets that appointment is representing the school district. However, the urban renewal is a separate legal authority. It is a separate governmental entity. And when engaging in voting on different, obviously, there's even, the right of eminent domain is a power that's vested in urban renewal. I think one of the thoughts is, when you cast a vote, particularly if it's for projects, the if not but for question is not a legal standard by any means. It's not illegal. And developers have been very skilled in taking advantage of that tool to their benefit. But the question I have, it's like, how do we as a board kind of address that? It's like, if there's a vote and we're putting that responsibility on one of us, and without necessarily carrying the authority of the position of the full board, is I guess my point. And so I think it's just something we as a board should think about, how we how we engage with that and what the expectations would be for that appointee. The other thing I'd point out too is there's nothing in the law that says we have to appoint one of us.
Yes, there is.
Actually,
I
it
don't
actually
think-
does.
Does
Yes,
it
there
say
is.
the
It has to be
director? Does it-
elected, the elected
Did they,
member.
okay, that was
You
interesting.
don't-
I don't know if it's in the law, but it's in the documentation,
yeah.
yes. that
Oh,
they
in the,
provide.
but in
Yeah.
in the.
From Lura, it
It has
says
to
they
be
want
Those
an
from-
elected
oh.
board
Elected
member.
board members.
Okay, so not the state statute, so it's the, so, okay, then I appreciate that clarification.
And to your first point, that's the part that I've enjoyed. American history and civics class, when somebody is elected, do you represent the voters? Do you represent yourself? How do you actually carry that out? And so I leave that to you.
His question
Prompted a
me.
question?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. We'll go
So-
back to you and then we'll go to
So
Alexander.
I'm curious, because Barb was the first person from the board to fill this.
She's the
role.
only one
Well,
who's.
right, she's the
yes.
first person. So I understand what you're saying, Mike, but I guess my question is, the whole time that Barb served on Lura, we never received any kind of report or like, oh, hey, this is coming up for a vote. I mean, so I guess I'm trying to understand, is that something that we need to address now? Because before it was so new and we didn't really have that expectation. Because when Barb served on the Lura board, there was no communication.
So during the Centerra South process, I found board minutes where the developer and Gordon and others made presentation to the board about Centerra South,
Yes.
which
Yeah. That's
informed the
correct.
process of whether the school board member was going to vote to support that, because they needed to have all the taxing entities, the county, the city, the school had to approve this before it could go forward. And at one point, the county was holding back the vote. We don't know whether we want to do it or not. And so therefore, so some stuff does come to you, but I would dare say, similar to what you've been asking for lots of different topics, that whoever's appointed, when there are major items coming up, should be reporting to the board ahead of time to get feedback, similar to the way the STU does for the case legislative process, is that it's not Stu's opinion going to case, it is the board's opinion. Sometimes you take votes, sometimes it's the consensus, but I agree, it should be informed.
That was not occurring, which, in some of those presentations, I can't remember if it was before she was appointed or after,
Yeah.
but there was not that.
That
what
was
you-
the
that
only
there was
real
not that what
action
you just described.
That I would say a lot of the things had to come here for discussion, but I think that's definitely a concern that you should have. The agendas, when they come out, should be shared with everybody. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, certainly, I think that kind of leads to what Mike was asking, which is, what, if somebody, when somebody on this board is serving on that capacity, what's the expectation of the board, of that person, in terms of that give and take conversation?
And to kind of build off of that too, I think one of the things that, you know, because it's, and I'm struggling, like, if it's the board appointee or the board that would manage, like, what is the negotiating position for the school district when it comes to these development agreements? Because we can ask for anything. I mean, we can ask to be exempted from it. We can, or from the tax increment. We can ask for money back. We can ask for land. We can ask for. There's so. I mean, within the framework of that authority or the power, but it's not necessarily like if it's somebody that's appointed. It's just like we're not expected to do the staff's work on the board. If I'm on the Lura board and there's a development, I can't say, no, I want to negotiate. I mean, you could, I guess, but it's just, it starts to get into like some murky area instead of saying, hey, no, Brett needs to negotiate and you know, we need to come back and approve it as the board, and then whoever the person is on the could vote against it. I mean, or whatever. And so it's like, it's this weird, funky kind of role, and that's what I'm just trying to kind of.
And I moved here almost 3 years ago now, and having been in municipal government involved with, like, of course I started getting involved, and what's this all about, all this other stuff like that, and I learned all these different things. Then I get to be the CFO, and I'm looking at these documents. It's like, oh, they came up with this document in 2002 to pay the school district millions of dollars. It's like, well, did the developer do it as a way to, well, we didn't have a vote then, as a way to actually support the school district and do the right thing? And then when Centerra South came through, is this a way, and I'm not casting this person, is it a way to make sure that the vote was gonna be there again because we're gonna give you money again, so there was consistency, as opposed to Barb saying we need more money? So I think that's an important theory discussion, but I think there may be more things in the future that this will happen again.
Alexandra, comment or question?
So I think, I mean, more of a comment, because I know, like, when this whole thing started and when Barb was appointed and when we had to talk about the Centerra South thing, one of the things that we did negotiate for was that we got to keep the taxes that were part of the mill levy override, I think, right, and maybe
Yeah.
the bond too, that we made sure that those were extracted from the tax increment financing. And so that was done sort of through the process you said, like, we didn't as a board negotiate that I think Gordon did that, and that was, so it was sort of this collaborative effort between the board and the staff and Laura and the whatever. And then I think between then and now, there hasn't really been anything that's happened of great note. I mean, they had the audit, I guess, the audit would be one big thing,
Yeah.
but there haven't been any other, like, huge changes or anything like that. And so I would think, you know, I think that definitely, I think whoever is on the LURA should be a representative of the board. I definitely agree with that if there are these bigger issues, it needs to be something discussed by all of us, and then that person is our voting representative. And then if there are gonna be big changes, it would need to be, like, involving the districts, the
Yes.
staff and
Yeah.
the stuff like
Agreed.
that.
Agreed.
And so, I mean, I think all of those things are important, and I would agree, you know, keeping us abreast of what's going on.
I think the Centerra South that happened before she
Could you
was
speak a little louder,
appointed.
Nancy?
It
Speak a
may-
little louder.
I think the Centerra South negotiation happened first, and then Barb was appointed.
Maybe, I mean, I feel like it was all kind of around the same
I
time.
think that's right.
But yeah, yeah.
All right. Anything else, Alexandra?
Well, no, and then I guess my question is, we do at some point have to appoint somebody.
Yes.
So at the next meeting,
At the
because
next
has to be a
meeting.
vote, a board action,
Okay.
so at the January 21st meeting, there will need to be a vote on who will be the representative from the Thompson School District.
Okay.
And they generally meet quarterly, but sometimes every other month.
So they are looking at maybe trying to run another meeting, it looks like maybe towards the end of January, so
Mhm, that's right.
when I spoke to them, it sounded like if we did get somebody on the 21st, then they would have, that would be good for that person to attend that first end of January meeting.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
jump in?
We've been around, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, I know it was a misstatement, but it made me think of something, which is that Stu's CASB role has been done with a lot of updates to us, including written and verbal reports, and asking us, how do we want to give, like, do we want to support something or not? And then there's also the role that Dr. Heller's played, Dr. Shaver played in case. And so I'm actually glad that you said that the way that you did, because it made me think that it, in a way, the way that Laura's worked for the most part is similar to what we do with case, which is like, we have somebody who's in this, and in both cases, you guys give us updates, you tell us the important stuff, you ask us about things ahead of time when you feel like there's a need for, but it's not all the time. It is more of, if you've got the engagement at that very high level, and then unless something needed to be raised to our level, or you wanted that input, you're in it, doing the work. And I think to some extent, that has to happen because there's executive sessions, there's things like that other people can't be part of and can't even be informed about. And so to a certain extent, we have to remember that is a piece of this puzzle. With that said, I do know that staff has usually participated in Laura
as an observer, giving information. A lot more is done in partnership with, because we do have a role in these things. And I know that, like, usually there's a couple people who are trying to stay involved with it, and even in the day-to-day work that happens. And so I just wanted to call those pieces out as well, because they already exist, and I think they're critical in helping us decide how we want to do this now versus what we decided when we had no idea what to expect.
So board, let me throw out this idea, and then you can react to it. I believe we do need to choose our representative at the January 21st meeting. Between now and then, Bob, Dr. Heller, whoever else perhaps should be part of a planning team to come up with a plan of how the person representing us will function on the committee, what kind of support will be available. I guess one of the things that occurs to me, because I'm not really familiar with how Lura operates, I know only in general what it is and how they operate, is will there always be time for our representative to come back to us and say, this is what we're talking about, what do you want me to do, or how do you want me to vote? And I don't know whether that's a concern.
Not necessarily,
Yeah.
with the fact that they could post a meeting on a Thursday and they could meet the following Monday.
Okay, so what I'm saying is
There will be
possible.
times where that will not be possible, yeah.
All right, so, board, does that sound reasonable? That by the 21st, at the point that we actually choose our Lura representative, that we'll have a framework of how we'll support our representative, what the duties are of our representative, et cetera. And I'm fine if somebody wants to jump in and add to what I'm saying.
I would ask that as part of that be included, like how often, kind of similar to your CASB updates, and to Dawn's point, that the representative, the Lura rep would update the board. Because I think that's just something that we didn't even think about, because we just never had it when Barb was the Lura.
And certainly part of that could be, much like we have a CASB update at study sessions, that there could be a Lura update at study sessions, and there may not be anything to update each time, but when there is,
There may be
sure,
nothing.
it could be built into our study session plan. Yeah.
We can also include the minutes
Correct.
for Lura in with our other written reports,
Sure.
so that that information is tied to
Yeah.
ours and not just out there for us to look at if we want to.
Sure.
So, with your permission then, board, shall we proceed in that way? And then we'll move on to the next agenda item? Everybody good with that? Okay. We're gonna move then to agenda item 4.4, the proposed 2025-2026 amended budget update. And I bet that's you again.
It is.
Lucky guy.
So on the first board study session in December, Zach Moser, Director of Finance, gave you a high-level idea of the budget concerns that we might have. We are looking at the 21st, in advance of the meeting, you will get the actual proposed budget adjustments, but I'll be telling you what generally they are. As a result of the final valuation, the mill levy that the board approved, there are more property taxes being collected, and similar to what I talked about with the Lura presentation, the state share is going down on the general fund part. Mill levy is going up because of the higher valuation, so that part is good. The bond fund, we will be giving you an amendment. You approved the bond fund. Now that the bond actually passed, we will actually show what's going to be raised in taxes and what will actually be paid in payments in the fiscal year. So, as was said in the audit, we actually have to show you what's expended and what's going to be expended in the budget. So we'll be doing that. The same thing for the sale of Monroe. You already approved the proceeds of that, but we need to actually incorporate that into the capital funds fund, so that's actually a true budget adoption on that. We are checking to see if the payment in lieu of taxes, where there needs to be any proposed adjustment to that. As a result of the review of our special education Medicaid grant funding, we determined that many of our staff need to be reallocated from special education to the general fund. For instance, a school nurse, while they may help somebody that's in the special ed category, 99% of their time is not in special education. So that was improperly coded there, so we're moving that special education to general fund. That's not a general fund. They're both in the general fund, but it's a category. Medicaid grant funding, some of that has already been reduced and maybe reduced some more. We're validating how many of the staff should be on Medicaid versus not Medicaid, again, with their job duties. That is about $1 million worth of staffing between salaries and benefits that need to move from Medicaid funding to the general fund. I should have said that the net change in the revenue for the taxes and the state aid is going to be slightly $1 million, so that will offset the Medicaid funding. We, as a part of the audit, we determined that federal grant funds for many years had a negative starting balance. Somewhere along the line, we had expenditures more than our grants. We had the cash to pay it, going through. Our auditors said this is not a finding, but you really want to clean it up because you just keep it going. It's like, so we're making a proposal. We'll be coming to you for about $880,000 from the general fund to clean up the grant funds on that. Next year's audit is going to be even cleaner than it was this year. So the net draw on the reserve is going to be about $880,000. We're still pretty close to up to the 15% level right now for our reserve, which is the maximum we're supposed to have at this point. This will all be in a document that's similar to it with a budget resolution for the 21st meeting.
All right. Questions for Bob on this? Denise, we'll start with you. Do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. Lori?
Not at this time.
Nancy?
I'm in
Come on,
heaven
Nancy, you
again,
got
Bob. Because you're getting rid of those crazy negative beginning balances on the funds that would always drive me nuts. It's like, why is it negative? It shouldn't be.
We don't like red ink.
And then you'll also have before us, before the next meeting, some sort of like you did, I think Zach did it last year. Didn't he? The budget amendment where you spelled it all out on a spreadsheet, the pluses, minus on revenue and expenses?
Yes.
So you'll have that,
Yep.
that same thing?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Nothing.
Okay. Alexander? Dawn?
Good.
Okay. And I don't have anything else either, so thank you, Bob. So we will move on then to agenda item 4.5. District employee and district employee-owned businesses as authorized vendors.
That's Mr. Eversole as well.
That's right. Thank you for having the agenda item so I can stay.
I thought you were going to say thanks for having me tonight.
That's right. So we will often have cases where employees or employees' family members or employees' companies have the ability to bid on or provide services to us. We have board policy that requires that the board actually authorize that. And in the past, we did it once a year. We're now going to do it as vendors come up. Generally, it's not huge at this point, but we have the 2 vendors that are listed at this point. We are updating our standard operating procedure for how this is done, how they're approved, who actually gets to make the decision, because the employee cannot actually be the person making the decision. The principal has to within a school or another person at that point. Clarifying that the company work has to be done not on school time, not school resources such as a website, computer or copier services, that it actually has to be separate from the district.
All right.
So that will be at the 21st meeting for approval. Is that
Questions regarding that? And Lori, I'll start with you. Do you have any questions related to this one?
Not exactly related to this, but how goes the recovery?
Oh, the children's doing well. Post-op next week, and I'm off all the medications, so I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right. Nancy? Mike?
I just have a quick question, just from a process. So, like, we're just approving these contracts, not the vendors. So if they 6 months from now, if I don't know, Papa Tony's comes back, that we would have to approve it again, or are we saying?
We're approving them to do this work for this year.
Okay.
If they want to do, say, they were going to do landscaping, they'd have to come back to us for a different approval at this point.
Okay.
And each year, really, we should be bringing these in front of you. Been a bit of a gap since the last time this came in front of the board, so Bob and his team caught that and wanted to correct.
I think I've ever seen that.
No, I don't think so.
And Bob, we're talking about a school year, not a calendar year?
School year.
School year, okay. All right. Mike, did you have anything else?
Nope.
All right. Alexandra? All right. Dawn?
We had a similar question, but it didn't quite answer my question. So, I guess what I think is, like, I have a little rumble with as far as that is, like, if we're seeing, so I don't necessarily want to see, maybe it's because the name Papa Tony's making me think pizza, but I don't really want to see us
Like
order, us having a conflict about ordering pizza, which technically would come up here month after month after month. I don't want to see it. But at the same time, I also want to be sure that if we're spending $1,000 a month, month after month after month, you know, like, there's an aggregate amount that makes me think that I really, then it raises to a different level. I do think authorizing them as a vendor, but also having a sense of how much work we're doing with them is helpful. If that does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, $20 a month over and over again is gonna be.
That's why we have the estimated annual sales there, and they have to follow our regular procurement process. So, for instance, we also have other people that may be doing T-shirts, and as long as that price is within our guidelines, within other board policies, that is discretion of the schools. When it gets to be higher, then there's actually an RFP process and other things like that. So.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't, like, looking at these all the time either.
Okay. Denise?
I'm delighted to see this as a parent who was forced to buy from a coach's side business for many years. I think this is a much more legitimate way to do it, so thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions. So let's move on then to agenda item 4.6, the 2025-2026 Board of Education meeting.
Thanks, Bob.
Calendar amendment. Bob, you're not going to do this one too?
No.
All right.
Are you sure?
If you're sure.
It's got numbers in it. It's a calendar.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Then I will turn it over to whoever is
I
going
think
to
we're really
do this
looking, we're looking at
presentation.
the potential of the conflict for April, I believe. Is that accurate?
Study session.
Study session in April.
So the first is what we have today.
Yes, we have April 1st currently listed as our study session.
Just keep in mind that because of spring break, our March board meeting will not be till the week right before that, so it would be March 25th. And then the next Wednesday would be the study session, then you would have a week and then the regular meeting.
Yeah, it's pretty tight there, that end of March to early.
And it's getting to the end of the year shenanigans, so
Oh, yeah.
everything's
Yeah.
booked.
Okay. Nancy, I'll start with you regarding questions or comments.
Are we asking, what are we asking? If we're
So-
okay with it being on April?
No, so I can talk about this. So the first night of Passover is Wednesday, April 1st, which I didn't realize when the calendar was being made last time. And so Passover begins that evening, extends for 8 days. The first night is the most important night. The second night is sort of important. After that, it's fine. Basically, That's the quick and dirty. If you live in Israel, only the first night matters. The second night doesn't matter at all. But if you don't live out of Israel, the second night kind of matters. So basically, when I realized that it was that night, I had said, so so the question is for me, I said, I won't be there on the 1st. Like, I will not be there. And so the question is, do you guys want to change it to another night that doesn't conflict, or do you just want to keep it on that night and have it without me? And I'm really okay with either, partly because part of the thing is the same as when we had to change the October one. The issue, like what would be the easiest thing to do would be to move it from the Wednesday to the Tuesday. But the Tuesday, since the Wednesday is April 1st, the Tuesday is actually in March again, March 30th. So it's not even in April. And so then Laura Lee and I had sort of emailed like, okay, so could we move it to the next week? Which we could. It, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think any of those days would be fine. We could move it to the Thursday, the 2nd. But again, that's sort of like a little gray area. So again, like I said, I'm totally fine with leaving it as is and you guys just knowing I won't be there. But if you want to change it, we can.
So in October, I also wasn't going to be there, which is why we had to talk about, you know, were we going to have a quorum then?
Right.
If anything else popped up at the last minute. That's one question I have is, does anybody else have a conflict with April 1st that we know of?
Right, today.
Yeah, only today. Is everybody else planning on being at the April 1st meeting if we had it on April 1st?
Well, I was just looking at the calendar, there's actually 5 Wednesdays in April. And so if we moved everything back to the 8th and the 22nd.
So you'd have to reschedule the regular meeting as well.
And then it would be
Change
every
the-
other week, giving the break. I mean, I'm fine with it being on the 1st, but it's like going that way.
Oh, then May we'd be back in sync.
And then everything is
Yeah.
still, and then you still have a week break before you have the one on the 6th of May as well, which might give us a little bit more breathing room, so to speak. But, you know, to have it be the every other week, if that's more agreeable, and then that would work out for your schedule as well. Like I said, I'm fine with it the other way, but it's like going that way.
Our policy says the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays are when our meetings are supposed to be, so I would suggest you don't move both of them, but if that's what you wanna do, we can see if Berthoud High School is available on the 22nd. The April meeting is not in the boardroom, it's at Berthoud, so we would have to change to
We have to
two
verify
times
that
and
they're
two-
available, yeah.
I would offer, if it's the 8th and the 15th, I'm more than happy to accommodate, you know, and just move it back a week. I mean, we still have a week.
We've always tried to accommodate some of the religious.
April 15th is Nancy's favorite day though, because it's tax day.
No, not really. TurboTax updated today, so no, it's not my favorite day.
I would just kind of ask more from like a staff perspective. And
That's just what I was gonna ask.
Create any administrative.
That would be only a week
Yeah.
between the study session and the regular meeting, and knowing that we would be voting on things during the meeting on the 15th. Is that gonna give staff
Any big
enough
challenges
time?
from the business office regarding that?
Considering that time of year, Bob? No?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think most of, obviously the personnel report is already in front of you at the study session. There's always some changes, but that's just the nature of, I would say in general, we'll be able to make that work if that's what we decide to do. I don't think that's gonna, the only question I think we will have to verify, because I believe the first, we're supposed to be at Big T for the study session. We'll need to verify that that'll still work with them, or if we have to make some changes, but that's something we can do between now and the 21st if we want to, if that's the direction we want to go, Laura, we can work on that.
The other question I have is what other committees meet on the 8th? So SEAC does, which means we miss that meeting, which is fine. But there might be more because a lot of the committees meet on Wednesdays, on the other weeks, the other Wednesdays. And so if it's more than one committee, we might want to consider if that's a problem, but.
It might be an urban renewal meeting too.
Yeah, those I think are on Tuesdays.
Oh, no, on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
No, they're Tuesdays.
They're on Tuesdays.
Tuesdays.
They make them to the city council.
Sure.
Not really, that's not really long.
I'm looking at the list of committees, and I'm fairly familiar with when a lot of these committees meet.
Yeah, it looks like the only one that's on our calendar is SEAC for that night.
Okay, then we're fine with one committee.
All right. So,
Do you guys in general feel okay about doing an 8th and the 15th? Did everybody feel okay with that? We'll work on it.
all right,
So we'll work on it with Big T to make sure we're good, so we can bring that to the regular meeting for approval.
all right.
Thank you.
I think we'll go ahead and move on then to agenda item 4.7, National School Board Recognition Month. I don't think we probably need to discuss this in length. I would like to ask if anyone would like to read I assume there's a proclamation connected with that?
Yeah, so we'll use the same one that's been used before, obviously update that, and I talked to Laura Lee, I said, I would actually like to read it if you guys are okay
that
with
would
it.
be great.
I talked to Mike a little bit about this. We have a whole slate of stuff within our social media and communication campaign around making sure that we properly acknowledge the work of the board during this month. So.
And we get a bonus of 10 times our.
Correct. 10 times your
10
current
times
pay.
what we usually. Yeah.
100 would be nice.
All right. So thank you, Dr. Heller, and we'll count on you to
You got it.
give us all a pat on the
That's
back
right. That's right.
in regard to that. All right, agenda item 4.8, the standard action consent items. I think we'll go ahead and go through the normal questioning process that we've used tonight. Alexandra, do you have anything that you would like to comment on in regard to anything on the standard action consent item list?
No, I do not.
Okay. Dawn? Denise?
No.
Lori? Nancy? Mike? Nor do I. All right. Now, Dr. Heller, we will see all of these on January 21st, and we will vote on all of them.
That is correct.
Correct?
That is correct.
All right. Okay. Then now for what you.
It's the moment we've been waiting for.
I know, that's
That's why
what I
we
was,
came.
yeah. And I'm sorry to tell you, I only have about a 2-minute CASB report. I'm sorry. I promise I'll do better as time goes along. Obviously, the legislature is not in session yet, but I do have a couple of things related to old business that I thought you might be interested in knowing from the CASB convention. You will recall we have talked 2 or 3 times about resolution number 8, which was submitted by the Edison School District, and that was the resolution that was allowing them to have students, or pardon me, have members serve on the board who did not live in that school district. And I'll read you the amended resolution that CASB approved. Proposed legislation allowing one at-large, out-of-district candidate, and this is an addition now, who resides in-state no further than 30 miles from school district boundaries to be appointed or elected to occupy a seat on the District Board of Education if there are no other in-district candidates available to fill the vacancy, allowing local district policy to prevail and override if desired. So the new part, which was not originally part of the resolution, was the wording who resides in state and no further than 30 miles from school district boundaries. Your representative on this particular committee asked about the length of term of the person who would be appointed from outside or elected from outside, and the answer to that would be set in the legislation. So, and we've talked before, this will likely not ever affect us, but we as a board did have representation during the discussion, and I did mention some of the concerns that were presented. So that was the wording that was adopted in regard to that particular resolution.
And if I might, there was a point where there was language in there that they had to have a family member in the district.
That's right.
They took that out.
Yes, they did.
And obviously this does not impact us because our policy says you must live in the district. We would have to change policy before we could do that. So
that's right. Yes. So the other resolution that we talked about, and I didn't bring the exact wording, but it has to do with urging the legislature to provide funding for rural schools who were on a 4-day school week. You kind of remember our discussion of that the legislature had allocated funds, I think it was in either 2022 or 2023, that had never been released and probably now don't exist under the current funding crisis. But CASB did approve supporting the idea of having the legislature provide that funding for the rural schools, since the legislature did approve it. And I do intend, by the way, this is the end of my report, I intend to attend the Chalkbeat update tomorrow. Mike, thank you very much for letting us know about that. I don't know whether anybody else is.
I already have something.
Pardon me?
I can't already.
Yeah,
have
and
business.
that's perfectly fine. I kind of see this in a way as being kind of an extension of my CASB responsibility. So if anybody else is going to attend, that would be great. It's a pretty easy one. I think it lasts an hour and it's Zoom. So
I'm going to zoom in over my lunch.
I'm sorry?
I'll probably zoom in
Okay.
over my lunch.
Very good. So that takes care of the CASB report.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
On the out of district thing, why is there a question about how long that person would serve for? Isn't there already a rule that says when you fill the vacancy, when you're appointed to fill a vacancy, that as soon as the next normal election happens, that person has to run?
Your question is a logical one, and I don't have the answer to it. I just know that when I asked the question in regard to length of term, the answer was that it would be set by the legislature if and when this was ever adopted as a law.
Policy, but I don't know that that's
Yeah,
a
I know there was a
statewide policy.
conversation around whether.
I think it is.
I think it is in state law, but I think there was a question about whether there should be a change to that for these specific candidates who don't live in district, where they should have a limit, a shorter term, to then open it back up to a potential in-district candidate to run or something. That was the conversation. And they said, well, if this passes, there'd be some type of rulemaking that would have to obviously go into effect.
The additional language that I found very interesting was that they decided that the person needed to reside within the state of Colorado. And I thought, wow, was it possible then that somebody could have be brought in from Nevada or New York or whatever for something?
It's probably good for them to have that clarification.
Sure.
Well, yeah, you're looking at like Durango, which is right next to Mexico.
Just barely over the border.
You know, I do wonder about a couple of those places where that actually
Right by New
might be a
Mexico.
barrier, right? There are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grand Junction, although that's a big one.
But the way that things are abused sometimes, I would hope that they would be fairly specific in terms of making sure that this additional person couldn't come in from Vermont. I'm serious. That there, maybe it needed to be a contiguous state in addition to just 30 miles. But
30 miles.
anyway, I don't know whether this will ever become law. And if it does, I promise I will bring back whatever version it exists in. All right, so we're going to move now to Agenda item 6, which is study session discussion items. 6.1, Audit Advisory Committee membership.
He's back.
Of course he is.
So, this is a committee that I didn't know existed, and I'm not sure if when the last time we actually had people on the committee. So,
It hasn't been that long.
okay.
When I was treasurer, I was on this, and Alexander followed me as treasurer, and you were on the committee too, and met a few times probably.
Oh, I think only once.
I remember going one time when you did, but I don't remember when that was.
Okay, Bob. go ahead.
So the duties of it, just to let you know, the duties of it are to review the audit, select recommendation for the auditor and things like that, all of which was done directly with you as the board. So the duties of this committee have actually been undertaken. So when we went out to RFP and selected CLA, we presented the RFPs to all of you, so you got to see the ones that qualified. And then we made a recommendation to you, and then you voted to do that. The audit presentation came to you by CLA, and you got to ask questions, and we made recommendations to approve it, and you did approve it. Now, it was submitted to the Colorado Department of Education by December 31st. So I am in full support of this. If you want to continue, for those that were serving on it before, it is another layer of transparency and information that would go to the community, the validation of the financials and things like that. It is not a finance committee. It is focused on the audit, and so therefore, when, for instance, when you selected the CLA, you actually selected it for a 4-year term with an annual appropriation portion. But during the initial part of this next audit, that will be in October of this next year, that before the work papers start, when they actually do it, there will be a meeting to talk about that with the auditors at that point. You would have this committee would have the opportunity to ask the questions, what are the weaknesses, what are the concerns that you saw in the last time, what would you want to do in the future? Before the audit is finalized, it would go to the committee again. There would be another meeting so that before it was finalized, you have an opportunity, if there were any findings or recommendations, you could ask questions at that point, look at management's response if there were any findings, and have an opportunity to do that. And then the committee would actually come to this board and make its recommendation regarding the audit as well. And that would be further support for me in the Business Services Department, so I have no problem with that.
Alexander, did you actually attend Audit Advisory Committee meetings there was just one? All right. When I was the treasurer, I think I attended 2 or 3 each year for 2 or 3 years. So I actually attended several meetings. And just to kind of provide some historical background, I thought it was an interesting and very valuable experience for me as a board member to sit in with the 7 community members, one suggested by each of the 7 board members. The CFO sat in, as well as the Director of Finance, and to listen to the questions that were asked, and also to hear comments that were made by the audit firm. I thought it was very interesting, and I thought it was an important part of my job as a board member, and I happened to be the treasurer at that point. So for whatever that's worth, I just let it off. All right, so what do you want from us, Bob?
So what it would mean is that you would need to nominate a person who would be willing to serve, send that person's name to Laura Lee so that we could then get them on and actually create.
From our director district.
Yeah. Not outside of Colorado.
Nobody from Vermont for this one. Mike, question?
Perhaps New Hampshire. Yeah, I just have a question. I have a question. I'm kind of 2 minds on this, so I might contradict myself. But on one hand, I understand the value of kind of having the communication with the community, or having the conversation with the community about what this means, or with a certain segment of the community. But on the other hand, I look at it and I said, this kind of aligns with what is the board's responsibility relating to the audit. And are we just kind of punting and you know, what would be our responsibility, or diluting it, or is there some, because, you know, when I look at all of the bullet points, it's like, well, that's what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, we're supposed to be providing that, and does that inform our decision, or inform kind of what we do, or is there some value that I'm missing? I mean, I'm open enough to know if I'm missing something, but and it seems like no one.
Go ahead, Nancy, and then I'll respond to what Mike
So
said.
what I would say to that is, to me, it's very similar to like the citizen bond oversight or the citizen mill levy oversight. How those monies get spent and get approved to get spent is part of our, but
those are directly kind of stem from the ballot language, correct?
right, but again, it still comes under our purview as the board. The bond committee can make recommendations, but the board still has the responsibility to say, yes, we want to spend whatever, $100,000 here or $1 million there, but it's still our vote. The only thing I would say about the audit committee is the feedback that I heard from a couple people was just that the way it was run previously, the members, they weren't really allowed to like participate. It was more like it was like everything was after the fact, and they didn't really get to ask questions or do anything. So I would just want to make sure that if we do keep it, that the committee members actually, you know, get to do something, or you know, feel like they're doing something.
And that's not my experience at all. Now, granted, I was on it as the board treasurer, but for example, the person who represented Director District G, the Berthoud area, is a CPA. He was the representative of District G before I even came onto the board, so he had done it probably 6 or 7 years. In conversation with him, I know he felt it was a valuable experience, and each year I had a conversation with him outside the meeting and said, so Ken, I didn't understand part of this, so what do you think about this? Not everybody who's on this particular committee needs to be a CPA. In fact, a lot of the people are just regular people like me, you know, just citizens in the community. But I think during the time I was on, and Alexandra, I'm not sure if this was your experience for your one meeting, there were 2 or 3 people who definitely had finance backgrounds, and it was interesting to talk to them and to hear what they had to say. So my experience wasn't the same as was reported by Nancy.
And I would say that that's not how I operate clearly, and so the way I would do it. I also see this as sort of an adjunct to the Thompson Leadership Academy, of teaching people in the community and maybe creating new future board members as a way, and to be self-serving as a way of supporting a future bond or mill levy, that we have not just staff saying things, it's community members.
I would agree. The more people that are educated on school finance and how this all works, I think the better we are. I think I remember talking to you at CASB after you went to that first school finance thing, and you walked away. It looked like, you know, your head was spinning a little bit because it's a very convoluted thing, and so getting more people educated on that is always a positive thing for us, typically, in terms of as we go down the road and need to do other types of asks in the future.
Other nonprofits, not governmental entities, often have 3 or 4 members of the actual board on an audit committee that would do this, and then that would go to the full board. In any case, it does, as you said, it's the full board's responsibility, but it's sort of a way perhaps to filter it to get it to us, get it to you.
All right. So give me some direction here, or give us some direction here in terms of what we're going to do on January 21st in regard to 6.1.
So first, I mean, obviously, the next item on this agenda is to just talk about committees. If the Audit Advisory Committee is a committee that the board wants to continue, then we'll need to at least have the board representative identified tonight as part of that process. And then I believe each of you need to identify a person in your director district to give to Bob so that he can then form the committee in Alexandria Athletics.
So I'm wondering why we do it that way. Because all of like our other, like CBOC or the other, or this leadership, we have people apply and
Yep.
then we select them. And
I don't know.
I don't understand why this is nominated by each of us, and I don't really like that, quite honestly. I think it's sort of odd for us to like handpick one person. And so I would advocate that I mean, I think it's fine to have it, but I would vastly prefer that we do it the same way as these other sort of citizen committees, is have people apply and then choose them.
Wise or not, I think the answer to that question is to make sure that all 7 director districts are represented on that particular committee. Now, I think the rejoinder would be, so
Does that
why isn't
matter?
it that way on all the
Oh,
other
right,
committees?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
right.
I think
Like,
that's.
why does that matter for this
I
one?
recall that
But
piece of
then couldn't
information
that be
came my
part of
way.
the
That was the
selection
reason.
process when we're reviewing them, we would look at,
Yeah.
So, what I don't know is if, this document, then if we need to change this,
Which is their bylaws, it's the committee.
the committee bylaws, and again, what that would look like if we changed it. I mean, we can do anything, because this is not a committee that is required, that we have to have. So this is really something that we could.
It's not in policy.
Well, it doesn't.
It's not a board policy, it's a committee.
Yeah.
It says, the board shall appoint committee members who have been nominated through a process reasonably determined by the superintendent.
Right.
Yeah, and approved by the board.
Yeah, so I mean, we could say, I could get with, Bob and I could talk to our legal counsel and say, hey, we wanted to maybe think about doing this a little differently rather than 1 per director district, and rephrase what that looks like, and then come back to you all and say, it could be like we do with other things, where we post an application process and anybody in the community can apply, and then we get that list, and if it's important to us that we have 1 from each director district, that could be at least part of the decision-making process to say, let's make sure we're hitting all 7.
Bob, if we decide to continue this, how soon would this committee need to, or be working?
You have plenty of time.
Okay,
You
all right.
you have months.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your pleasure on this?
well, I guess I would wanna know, do other people like, which direction do we wanna go? Am I the only person who thinks that it's weird the way that it's done?
Yeah.
Oh, there with you.
Yeah.
Well, but I guess I'm confused because based on the bylaws, it's not, maybe it had been done, but officially it's appointed by the superintendent and approved by the legal counsel. So so we're not obligated to.
Yep.
Well,
but it's-
the board approves it,
Right.
Yeah.
but the process is.
Yeah, so, but essentially, yes, Bob and I could work with legal counsel to come up with a new way to identify the membership.
Yes,
And
the
if-
process is kind of
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
so I don't know that it's I don't see that as even as an issue, quite frankly.
Yeah, in fact, I think some of our other committees have a write-up that is similar, that doesn't mean that we actually give you 1 name each. Like, we still appoint people by approving it.
Yes.
Even if we got the names from
Right.
social media requests.
Right.
Right,
Sure.
so I think we might still be okay in general. Overall, the reason that districts exist is because you find that sometimes people get stacked in one area, and it usually has to do with socioeconomic. Our districts already blow that away because of how they're drawn, and so I'm less concerned about that for us as it sits right now than and because they have to be even in number. And so I think having it come from a pool probably will give us it gives us better group of people, a bigger group of people to look at. I love the idea that we have a set of eyes who does this, who advises us by saying, we're third parties. That's the value of this. And whoever wants to do that, I appreciate knowing who they are.
Nancy, go ahead.
If we're gonna look at maybe revising the process, maybe we look at, do we need 7 members? How about if we had 5 members? Cause I know that sometimes trying to get people to, this year's been a weird year, but sometimes trying to find people to apply, like the Citizen Mill Levy Oversight has several slots that haven't been filled because it's hard to find. So if we say, well, if we're gonna redo it, let's not make it one from each. Let's just say we want it to consist of 5 members, people apply, and the board looks through the applications and we all say, we love these 5, or more than likely we'll only have 5 applications, but.
I struggle with that a little bit. I understand where you're coming from on that, but I also think, like, to your point, Bob, when the point you made about wanting to be outward in educating people on finance and when we make those requests is really, it's something that I'm value. And so, that argument was very compelling to me in terms of, like, keeping it. And I feel like given the fact that we have a long lead time for this, we should be able to get 7 people. I mean,
well, and when we have people who are Thompson, we have there's a number of people who are already, so I think we can get 7, especially with the lead time. And if we're struggling to find 7, we have some places where we could have conversations with our Thompson Leadership Academy team, see if there's anybody in there that's, really interested in learning more about finance. I think we have some places where we could find the 7.
well, I also kind of take it to heart a little bit too, as a elected community leader, that responsibility does fall on our shoulders a little bit, not formally, but I do feel like we should be shaking the bushes a little bit to get our neighbors and friends and people to be involved in this as well as a obligation of our office, I think, in some ways. So I feel like I'm up for the challenge to help you find people. I'm not volunteering to be on this one, but I feel like I maybe I'm naive since I'm fairly new to
To
the
speak
board.
to Alexandra's concern, it doesn't really matter to me how someone is chosen from each director district. It does matter to me that all 7 districts are represented. I do think that's important because if we don't go into this idea of revision with the idea that maybe we're revising the way that we find them, that it wouldn't be the 7 of us beating the bushes to find people, but I think there's real value in some committees at least to having a representative from each director district. That's how I feel about it. Go ahead, Denise.
My sense is if we open it up, we can get a better candidate pool than just who we know.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we can open it up, we can ask the types of questions, and we'll make sure that we can identify which director districts they do live in. We would certainly encourage the
That
board.
would actually be on the application.
Yes, right, and each board member could certainly encourage people they know in within their district to apply, and I agree with you, Mike. I think we can get 7 people who will be valuable members of that team.
I agree.
We will come back with a
Okay.
revised selection process.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move to 6.2, does anybody need a break, or shall we march right on?
This might be our long stretch now.
Yeah,
We have to get into the
it
board.
could be. What would you like to do? Would you like to take like a 7-minute break, or do you want to march on?
Keep going.
March on?
Yeah.
Okay,
'Cause this is
we are
gonna be
marching
quick.
on.
Yeah.
What, Nancy?
It's gonna be quick this next one.
I love it.
All right. Okay, so we're moving then to agenda item 6.2, board committee membership. And are you leading the discussion
Yeah, I can at
on
least
this?
start the conversation. I mean, one of the things I would suggest maybe is we have a number of committees where there is only one person, or there's a couple with 0, where there's but there's only one person who has said they are interested in being on that committee. I think we can move through those relatively quickly and say, are we good on each of these committees, and then circle back to the ones where there's more than one person who's on there. So if that works for you, I can kind of move through them
Do
one
we
by
want
one.
to start with that, or do we want to start with the 4 committees that Cabinet said they were not even sure that we need to have.
Well, and that's kind of part of what I
representation.
have written down here. For example, like if we do that, so starting with 1338, which is the committee that does not require a board member to participate. Now, when I talk to some of the folks within the 1338 committee, they have said they have seen value in having a board member on that committee. Now, I don't know if that's always felt like the experience of the board member sitting on the committee, but
You've been on
you've
the
been on the
committee.
committee.
I mean, it's interesting, but it's really heavy on a lot of like, you know, kind of in the weeds, in the school building. And there's not a lot of, things that I've ever really been able to contribute. I don't know who was on it before me.
I was.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, and didn't they say that weren't really recommending it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's not necessarily required, but I will say that in some ways, and Tiffany, I don't know if you want to say anything about it, but there was some discussion within the membership of, they said they'd like the idea of a board member continuing on it from their perspective.
Yes, they liked a board member continuing on it from a board perspective. It meant a couple of things. Sometimes it meant the community member piece along with a student in the district or not in the district, and just an awareness of kind of that evaluation process and what our teachers go through and those types of things, like what there are some changes, upcoming potential changes, changing that to where the number of times of evaluation will be extended, so there's some things going on that will affect our teachers. And I think they just more of an awareness thing, but I think we could achieve that by coming to a study and sharing that information.
It is not necessary for the board member to be on there. I think the board members often, I'll be honest, what they've often done is they've filled this role of both board member and there's a community member spot on there. And I'll be honest, community members just aren't interested in attending this committee. So board members often fill a dual role as a board member and as the community member on 1338, and that's helped them to at least fill that. But if this is not one the board wants to continue to have on their list, we can absolutely, we'll work that out and we'll be okay. So yes.
We are required to have a community member with a student in the district, a community member that doesn't have a student in the district. So there's certain requirements of that. Board member was not one of them.
Right.
So the brief statement that kind of is the preface to these 4 committees is, Cabinet would recommend that the board consider whether they need to continue to provide representation to the following committees.
Yeah, and that is, 1338 was one, which we just spoke about, and I kind of have those listed here as well. Technology Advisory and Leadership, Denise has been on there. It is not required. There's value because you get to kind of hear what's being talked about beyond technology, but it's not a requirement. Yeah.
Just a second. Go ahead, Denise.
I mean, I certainly learned a lot, but then, one of the sessions was more like a working session, and so I don't think it's essential, but certainly I geeked out on it.
Yeah, and then the other 2 are the Community Safety and Security and the Security Emergency Management. Those 2 don't require a board member, but I think we've had board members on there. It's been a good practice, and we're okay with those continuing to have board members. But one of the things you all asked was, are there committees that are not legally required to have board members on there, or where it doesn't necessarily benefit the board to be on there potentially? Those would be the only 4 that we identified. So, yes.
On the community safety security one question I would ask Todd is, because one of the things I've noticed since being on it, I mean, it meets 3-4 times a year, is it seems many times like there was more staff than there were community members there. So maybe it's not even a question of, do we need a board member on it? It's maybe like, what is the real community interest in having it?
That's a great question, because we struggle with that too. We put it together after an incident we
Right.
had, and at first it was pretty robust, and we got a lot of applications. And then as time goes on, there's just not the interest. So we'll get the applications, we'll send the invites out, but it's getting people to actually participate is where we struggle too is, and then you ask, what is the benefit of it if, you know, it's taking more time, staff time, and then we're taking a meeting for, you know, 5 or 6 committee members, and that also, I don't think, you know, helps us progress through the way when we have other committees that have a lot of, let's say, content and community input into it.
Yeah, I just haven't seen, there hasn't been a lot of dialogue happening at it, and the number of people, it's, you know, it keeps.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was exciting at first, and then people don't know what they don't know, so when we shared the information about safety and security in detail, it kind of satisfied the information itch, and then they kind of said, okay, we're good, you get it, or we understand, and it's just,
It makes me wonder if we need to do some forums so that we're meeting that need on an ongoing basis, because when people have questions around lots of different security, safety related topics, like that I think is much more engaging to people when they go, okay, this is cybersecurity for my kid. Maybe I do need to know what websites are safe, which I know we actually do that already. But those are the kinds of things that I know people come to because they know that they have a reason that they want to learn it, and then it does help them go, okay, I understand this better now. And I think that's where our community probably has an ongoing need, and we have an ongoing need to share information and get information from them, but it doesn't have to be a group, the same group.
right, yeah, I totally
Because the
agree.
committee members, it's not like you join as the committee member, and then you go to this meeting, and then you go forth into the community and
Right.
do something.
Yeah.
Right. It's more information gathering than it is, you know, reviewing practices, policies, you know, it's information. You read information, you answer questions, and then that's kind of where
Yeah.
it is.
I think to your point, Don, that sometimes doing more, certain times a year, doing some like, hey, if you want to come and learn about about our school safety, you know, all those things, we're going to have some opportunities at different schools throughout the year, and inviting the community to come to scratch that informational itch. I want to make sure I understand what's happening in my kid's school. It's not an ongoing commitment, right? So I can come this one night and learn the things I need to learn, and not feel like I have to sign up to a committee that. Right. So, yeah. Listening to the conversation, here's my observation. There are 18 committees on the list. Cabinet chose these 4 that we were talking about with the language, board should consider whether they need to continue to provide representation. I'm reading something into that, and what I'm reading into it is maybe not, but that may be just my interpretation, so. Yeah, well, certainly I think it just goes back to that, the retreat conversation around there. We do have a lot of committees, and you all have jobs outside of this wonderfully paid job as a board member, and so if there's some committees that aren't necessary for you to be in there, potentially we can take those off of your list so that you're not all attending as many. But yeah, so if we start with like that 1338, nobody signed up for that one, and it does not require a board member. So if we're okay, we can certainly take that off of your list. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Not to belabor this,
Yeah.
because I'm about to belabor, but I would say, just as a courtesy, especially for committees that meet, if they'd like to invite a board member to attend.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I think I want to
for sure,
keep that
absolutely.
avenue open, just 'cause
Right, and
I
we're
don't
not
feel like we're
suggesting
just-
abolishing the committee.
No. Right,
It's
right.
just a
But
board member representation.
I just want to be
Sure.
respectful of
Yes, that's important. That's great. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the other ones, so the Technology Advisory Leadership Committee, again, I think you do learn a lot. It is a lot of IT people in one room.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm
It'd be
saying.
so much fun.
You're selling it over there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I think Denise, you did say that you would like to continue with that one if we maintain that committee as a representation group.
If we decide to. If you like keeping it, I don't know why we wouldn't let you.
Okay, we're okay with that?
Yeah.
And then the other 2 are the 2 safety committees. Again, the community one, and then
Yes, you want to be on the committee?
Did
If
I
sure
only
by
get-
her face.
And it's
if-
fine to say
If I
no.
only get 2 committees because I have to be on the one,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be the one I'd wanna be on.
Yeah, that's, yeah. So I mean, it's okay if we take that off of your list, cause you are already gonna be on one for sure because of
Yes.
the treasurer role,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so.
Denise, you have to choose what you're passionate
Yeah.
about.
Yes,
So we're
absolutely.
gonna-
So please do that.
We're gonna take that one off the board
Okay.
list.
All right.
Okay, and then we have the community safety and security, which we just discussed. And then we have the security and emergency management. And again, that one does not, if I'm correct, does not require a board member, but we do have 3 board members who have demonstrated interest in that one. So if that's, Todd, you wanna talk a little bit about the difference between that one and the community one?
Yeah, I'd say they're similar, but the internal safety and security one, it is more focused on actual process and implementation of pieces.
Yeah.
So it's less informational about here's what we do, here's the things that happen. That one's really focused on, we're thinking about doing this, like literally go talk about it. And let us know what you think. It's truly going through a process of implementing a piece of
Right.
system.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think, from my sense, that one that he just described has a greater level of value, I think, for a board member, because we are gonna talk about systems that are actually gonna get implemented in our schools, that are gonna impact our students and our staff.
And tell me again which one that is. What's the
That
name
is
of that one?
That is security and emergency
Okay.
management.
All right.
That's more like ongoing process.
Yes, correct.
And this was more, the community safety, that was more a response.
A response to a situation and a lot of people demanding information, so this community got created. I think the conversation is really maybe, can we move to more of a forum type of model of delivery of information for those?
I would support the latter on the
Yeah.
forum,
Yeah.
but that's just me.
So I would say we don't need, the board doesn't need to be on that committee, and that Todd may wanna get with Joe and decide. I mean, you'd have to talk to the community
Sure.
somehow about it, but.
Yeah,
So
I
our-
think it's a great idea, because it's important for us to show just whether it's finance, the transparency in what we're doing, and educating what we're doing, so.
The first 3.
Yeah, or to keep security and emergency management.
Yes.
You got it.
So just to summarize what I think we are saying is that we will continue to have board representation on security and emergency management, and we will not have board representation on 1338, tech advisory and leadership, and community safety and security. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Everybody comfortable with that? All right,
Okay,
moving on.
all right, we'll jump into the ones that only have one person signed up, and some of them are really easy. Audit advisory, Denise, that gets to be you.
Yeah.
Alexandra's a glutton for punishment, she wants to stay on calendar committee. And the committee specifically asked for her to come back.
Oh, did they?
Yes, they did.
That's so good.
CASB
Well,
legislative.
we gotta get this year off, so.
Yeah, CASB legislative, Stu Boyd.
And I'm happy to arm wrestle somebody for that one if you'd like to take it.
Families Pie, the only individual, what's that? I'm just going down the ones that only have one person signed up. Families Pie, Denise Chapman said that one was one she'd be interested in.
Yes.
Yep. Great. Joint insurance, Alexandra again, glutton for real punishment now, when we're talking about insurance. And again, that's another one where they really wanted her back because of her medical background, so.
Yeah, Dorothy, I will be texting Dorothy right
Yay.
Professional Concerns Committee, Stu, you were the only one that asked for that one, so.
I'd like to be on that.
Okay. And then Thompson Education Foundation, Denise was the only one that asked for that one, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't mind having 3.
You don't mind having 3, okay, okay.
That's my dream scenario.
Okay, love it. Now, Special Ed Advisory Committee, nobody put their name down on that one. So that one, again, does not, by policy or statute, require a board member, but there has been value, I would say, of having a board member on the Special Ed Advisory Committee in the past. So that one, there wasn't anybody who was signing on to that one.
There is not a board. There will be somebody at this table who will be there, but not as a board rep.
Right.
So, I mean, we do still have somebody in the meeting.
Yes. Yeah. So again, it's okay if we don't have a board member in because we do not have a requirement that there will be one. But yeah, it's up to you all. That's a board decision. Thoughts on?
What's your thought?
I think we should have somebody probably.
I agree.
So.
That's too important of a grouping of people
Yes.
to not have a board member.
Yeah, okay, I agree.
Okay. Since I'm not hearing anybody disagree with that, we'll move on then with that as one, that we'll have board representation.
Yeah, we just don't have anybody who has raised their hand saying they want to be that board representation. Nobody signed up on the form that that was one they wanted to do.
I can probably do it. I think, yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was just gonna open it up to people and say, think about it between now and whenever.
My challenge with that is, it's just my work travel.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And I since it's every other Wednesday, it's like I'm already kind of limited twice.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Alexandra, right?
Alexandra,
Yeah.
please take it. All right.
Except I won't be there on April 8th.
That's okay. Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. All right, so then we'll move back up to the top to the ones that had more than one individual who was interested, and then how you guys decide to arm wrestle or whatever over this is up to you. Citizens Bond Oversight, we had both Denise and Nancy who had said they were interested. Now Denise, you already have 3.
Yeah.
So I win by default.
Okay, you're okay with that? Nancy's moving into the CBOC. And CMAC, which is the Mill Levy Advisory Committee, Alexandra and Denise, but Alexandra, now that's a lot of committees for you.
And we both now have 3.
And you both have
Yeah.
3. So I'm gonna, somebody else.
How often does that committee meet?
Because there is a CMAC coming up.
Not very
3 times a year.
January,
3
April,
times a year?
September.
Are they 3 meetings in a row? I mean, in a,
January, April, and September, I believe.
okay, so they're spread out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can do it because of the time and the frequency. I'm okay with it.
Okay,
Okay, perfect.
cool.
All right, Curriculum Improvement Committee, we have Mr. Boyd and Mike Scholl interested in that one.
And
Rock,
Mike,
paper, scissors, or not?
no, I'm happy to pass that off to you, and I'll tell you why. I sensed when we were talking about this latest Curriculum Improvement Council issue regarding the, I don't remember the name of the class, history.
We don't wanna talk
something.
about it again.
Yeah, no,
Don't
I'm not
bring it
gonna
up.
bring up the class, but I sensed that you had, maybe a fresher perspective on that than I might have on that whole concept. And so I'm happy to let you do that if you'd like to do that.
Sure, if you're.
And that one doesn't have a ton of meetings, it's mainly as we're preparing for that next round, but yeah.
It's a
I think-
couple times in the
couple times
fall,
in the
is that
fall,
what it
yeah.
is?
Well, that was part of what
Yeah.
why I was.
Yeah,
For
couple
both
times in
of
the
those
fall.
reasons. So.
Perfect. All right, next one is District Accountability Committee, and Don, Lori, and Mike put their names down for that one.
This was my 4th choice, so
Yeah.
I'm willing to just step away. So.
Thoughts on that? Another one, Don,
And who was it?
Don, Lori, and Mike were the 3 who had put their names
Dawn,
down.
Lori, and Mike. And that was DAC?
Yes,
No,
that is DAC.
That's DAC.
Yeah. And there's, I'm gonna throw something out here that's a curveball for all of this, which is that, I mean, I'm happy to continue to serve on it. I've been off and on with DAC in various roles. And I am concerned about having someone represent us on committees who has said that they're not going to perform their oath of office to represent the board when they're not going to represent the board. I have real concerns about, given Lori's comments at the last board meeting. I've had dozens of people reach out to me with concerns about it, and I don't feel comfortable having board representation for somebody who doesn't represent us as a body.
I didn't hear her say that.
That's
I
fine.
did hear her share what her values and her basis for making decisions on, but that's not the same as saying she's not gonna represent the board. I mean, we all bring our different perspectives and values. Granted, you articulated it for everyone to know, which I think we all have it, we just, you know, but I don't think that's the same as saying you're not gonna represent the board.
I did print off, because I also have been contacted by a number of people who were concerned about what Lori said at the last meeting, and so I printed off this part of your statement, that you said you would not vote for any policies, curriculum, or expenses that violate clear biblical teachings. And so I guess I have a concern. I'm not sure it's the same concern that Dawn articulated, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll put it out there too, just, I mean, that sentence right there, I'm incredibly uncomfortable with having the decisions made for people that don't have a biblical foundation in how they make decisions. And that feels you're like limiting, potentially our students and their parents in making decisions in that format.
Additionally, we're not supposed to make our decisions until we've had discourse. It's supposed to be based off of the issues in front of us as they exist. Obviously, we all then bring our perspectives to it, which may include very similar things to what was said. But saying and declaring that has already been decided, instead of saying that is how I will try to make the decisions, is a significant difference, and therefore my concern. And that's why I'm saying it's also not representing the board, because we're not supposed to make our decision until we've fully heard an issue. That is the law.
And having served on other boards, other committees, it's like, and as President Boyd said, you know, I mean, we have to base everything on the Constitution. Its underlying is, you know, like, say, as far as my principles, I think it's fair for people to know where each one of us is coming from. You know, what is your plumb line? Because everybody does have, you know, a plumb line, whether you have a faith or not. That does not, I never said I was not going to represent. It comes down to, hey, this is my criteria, this is my foundation for my life. I'm not excluding anybody. I'm not.
Okay, I don't agree with that, and I've seen you actively exclude people in many practices outside of this room. You're new to this room, but you have absolutely made it very clear that there are groups of people in total that you plan to exclude.
I'm gonna interrupt here and just say that we all took an oath when we became board members to uphold the Constitution, and I don't have a copy of that oath handy, but that's what we agreed to, was the language of that particular oath, not our political or spiritual beliefs. That's my opinion.
I would like to add that, since we're being so open and honest, I would like to add on that in the time I have served on this board, I have seen you very clearly show up to the board meetings with your mind already set on making a decision. And you are not as open and welcoming as you like to believe you are, because I can tell you as someone who's been subjected to you, you're not as open, welcoming, and inclusive as you like to put out there. So
Okay,
I think we should just move on and accept that we all have different beliefs.
I think we
Every one of us.
probably established the point in regard to this. Dawn has stated her position, her opinion. Lori has responded. A couple or three of the rest of us have as well. So, Dr. Heller, I guess I'd like some direction here.
I would love to be
in
able to give you some.
In terms of where we go.
Yeah, so you really, I mean, Mike has kind of already said of this wasn't like the top committee he wanted to serve on, so he was okay with not being in this one. So we really have two individuals, Dawn and Lori, who have also showed interest. I think there needs to be, I don't know what process, these are board committees that you want to go through to tie break or how that wants to work. It's not typically this is not something we vote on as a board. That's not a process we've gone through. I think my understanding is this district has done it a variety of different ways in terms of identifying committees when there's a conflict. Sometimes I think it has been a couple of members of the board have then gotten in a room if there's been any types of conflicts. I don't have a. It can be up to how you would like to see this done. There's a lot of ways we could do this. I mean, yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Sorry. May I suggest maybe perhaps a compromise?
Sure. Please.
I'm not going to wade into kind of my colleagues' beliefs. But is there can you appoint 2 board members to that? I mean, is there any restriction? I mean, if I don't
believe so.
I don't think there's any restriction.
I mean, if there's
2 people who truly want to be on there, I don't think.
I mean, I had expressed interest but as I said, when I listed it off, it was kind of my 4th choice. And I am willing to kind of serve, if it's jointly with Lori, because obviously you're going to bring those beliefs to every committee you serve on. So to me, if it would, if having 2 people serve and getting a different perspective would be, I'm willing to make the commitment with the caveat that because it's a monthly meeting and that I just have to balance some work conflicts occasionally, and I probably would do my best to, at a minimum, attend virtually.
Right.
But that's part of the reason why.
In response to what you said first, I don't think there's any limitation in terms of the number of board representatives there could be on a committee.
Other than if we get too many, we can create a quorum, and now we have a different issue. But
Yes.
2 is not going to create that issue.
I do believe that Barb and Dawn went to most meetings last year.
Yeah.
So Barb went to all the meetings.
She
even though
did. She also went to all of them when I was on.
Yeah.
So,
But
I mean, you've had 2 board members on there.
But I guess then if we do appoint 2 and Dawn goes, then that constitutes it.
I wouldn't go if
Yeah.
we knew that we already had 2. I mean, that definitely is not necessary.
Does that compromise make sense? I mean, would be people okay with that compromise that Mike's suggesting? That Lori
I
and
do
Mike?
think there's value in getting to learn from the
Oh,
presentation.
there is a ton of value.
Sure.
Because there's depth to
And,
it.
and I will say, I
there's
wasn't here before, but
community
the
involvement.
DAC team, the 2 co-chairs are doing a really nice job, and the work with learning services, it is a very good committee right
And
the
honestly,
board member's not a voting member anyway.
Right.
Correct.
That's right. We're not voting members on any of these committees.
now. Other than
well,
Laura.
SEAC, they're.
Well,
But not as a board member. That's quite clear.
our Laura representative will be a voting member of that committee. But
I was
think
just gonna say that
that's the
when Lori was asking about DAC, the reason I said that might be good for her is because as a new board member, you get a lot of different staff coming
Yep.
through and presenting.
Mhm.
It's a good way.
So a learning
Be
So
valuable
if it
for
was
both.
actually both.
Yeah, so for our
of
2
you, it would
new
actually
board
make
members,
sense
yeah.
for both of you.
That
Because you would
sounds
get
like a good idea.
exposed to all the different departments.
Yeah, I enjoyed the meeting I went to.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I said, it's just I want to be transparent about
Okay.
my schedule. So.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on then, and then I'll ask Dr. Heller to kind of summarize where we are in regard to the committee assignments.
All right, I think we're down to Master Planning Committee is the next one, and again, we have 2 individuals who showed interest, Dawn and Nancy on that one.
Right, and I expressed at the retreat that I was interested in.
Mm-hmm. And I'm ready to move away from that committee, so, and if Dawn, this would be a great committee, don't you agree, Todd? To have 2 board members on.
It's the best committee.
No, the calendar committees.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm fine, Nancy, if you want to take this. Yeah.
Well, I'm
that's
fine if Dawn wants to also be
Well, what-
on it.
Yeah.
Are you fine if we sign both of you up for this
Yeah,
committee and you come to
Nancy,
work?
I'm fine.
Dawn's okay with letting it go,
Okay,
let Nancy take
then
it.
you, it's you.
And then the last one is security and emergency management, and this one again, we had three. We had Dawn, Lori, and Nancy. Thoughts on that?
Would you be on any if you don't do this
Yeah,
one?
that's what I was gonna say.
CMAC. I took CMAC because nobody else did.
Right. Well, so Dawn only has one right now,
Yeah,
so it would
correct.
make sense for you to have a second committee.
Mm-hmm. The other two people fine with that? Okay. You wanna do a review for us, or
Yeah, I
is
mean-
or is that
Did I miss
necessary?
anything? Did we miss anything?
Can we just go through from the top?
Yep. You wanna do that, or?
I think we're voting on it.
All right, so Laurel's gonna go from the top just to make sure we're good.
So 1338, we will have no board member.
Right.
Audit advisory will be Denise as the treasurer.
What's that?
Calendar will be Alexandra. CBOC will be Nancy. CMAC will be Dawn. CASB will be Stu. Community Safety Security, we will not have a board member rep. CIC will be Mike. DAC will be Lori and Mike. Family Pie will be Denise. JIC will be Alexandra. Loveland Urban Renewal will be decided in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
MPC will be Nancy. PCC will be Stu. Security and Emergency Management will be Dawn. SEAC will be Alexandra. TALC will not have a board member. TEF will be Denise.
Yep.
How does that sound? Everybody good with this? Yes?
Great.
And I'll be sure and let all the members know which of you will be serving.
Yes. All right. Any other questions related to this before we move to item number 7? All right. Future topic items for board consideration. Anyone have anything that you'd like to suggest that we talk about?
You go first. Or
So-
we're probably the same thing, I bet.
Perhaps, I wanted to have a follow-up with the email that the students sent to the board this week.
Oh, about the climate.
Yeah,
The student?
yeah.
Climate literacy
Climate
seal.
literacy.
Yeah, the climate literacy seal. I mean, I think, I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail, but I do think, I wanna honor the work that the student made to reach out and have, or have a presentation or have a discussion about it at a future study session, or invite them to come kind of talk to us about it and make the case.
Yeah.
Because, in terms of the young, I think it was a young lady and the young man came down.
Yep,
to-
they were part of the team.
Part of the team, and so,
Casby, yeah.
so I would ask her, that we add that to a study session and invite them to come and to kind of discuss that, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I've already, I've talked to both of them about getting them in a room with our curriculum team to look at this as part of we're doing a full review of all graduation requirements right now, and there's gonna be some changes to graduation requirements we need to look at, so we've talked about getting them with that team as well, so that they have a chance to see it. Yes.
Okay. So Nancy, was that the same thing that,
No.
okay.
It wasn't.
Sorry.
It was, because I know originally the, CBOC member, or, selecting the members was on the agenda. I sent a couple emails, but now it wasn't on the agenda anymore for tonight, so I just wondered, like,
No, so
where
it's
did it
supposed to be,
go?
it's actually supposed to be, so in February is when that happens. CBOC is February, so the February study session and then the February regular meeting is when CBOC decisions get made.
It wasn't originally on the
No.
agenda for this?
So I did suggest that if there was a desire by the board to change the process by which CBOC members were identified, that potentially that could be a discussion item at the January regular meeting, so you guys could discuss,
maybe that's
do we wanna have a different way of appointing and identifying those members? Cause I did hear from Nancy and from Mike that there was at least some interest in a conversation around how that process might go forward. We're using a process that's been in place for a while. Maybe a conversation around doing that differently could happen at the January regular meeting, and then if that's what we'd like to do, we can do that as a discussion topic. Todd, anything you wanna add there?
Yeah, I would just add that there's 45 applications, for CBOC in general, so it's a pretty extensive process. Just however we do it, it doesn't really matter. The process I send the RFI is what we used before, just from history. Because of the extensive amount of applications, it takes some time to read through everything, everyone, and go through that process. So that's why that recommendation was out to say, the vice president and president reviewed them and filled those spots. We can look at doing it another way. I don't know if there's any suggestions or ideas that I could present next meeting.
Well, this was a while ago. Was it typical to get this many applications for it?
It's interesting when the subject came out about are we going to get people for CBOC, we've always had a lot. So we've always had, I would say, in the high 20s for community members wanting to join. And just a reminder to the board, is instead of director districts, we're doing a lot of it's by area. So we have to have one from Berthoud, one from Loveland, one from Fort Collins, one from Johnstown. And then we have a business sector of 2, a finance background, it has to be 2 members. And then there has to be 2 parents. And then there's just 8 that are drawn out of a hat. The rest of the applications we put in the hat, and board members just drew those out of the hat. And then each time the member fell off, I don't know if the board members would call over there, I'd bring a basket up to the dais, and he would pick a name out of the hat, and that would be the new member.
Did people say which one they were applying for? Like if they were applying for business?
They did, so we
Yeah.
have it broken down in a spreadsheet. Like, actually, I was just looking underneath the finance, there's 5 people that have a finance background, we need 2. So there's.
I don't have a problem with reading the applications, but we could talk about it
Yeah,
later.
if you want, we can have this as a discussion topic on the 21st. And then have some guidance again, so that Todd can make sure that on the February 4th meeting, whatever we're gonna do, he has a process in place to make that happen efficiently. And if it's gonna be the whole board reading all the applications, he's gonna need to figure out how to get those to you all and go through that process, so.
Right, okay. Any other future topic items for board consideration? Yes, go ahead.
I did go to the cell phone policy one, and that is something that we do need to have done by August.
Yes.
To
Yep.
have it district-wide. And in that presentation, they said they took a full year to get the buy-in from the community members. And, since it's something that has to be done by August, it's, and maybe that's something that does go to maybe one of the committees to kind of give us some ideas, or.
It's already
or
in
looking at
process,
it.
isn't it?
So, yeah, a couple things. What we're required to do by that policy is by July 1 or whatever, to have a policy. It's very limited as far as what the requirements are in that policy.
Very open.
Literally, we could have a policy that says every school will have explicit rules for how they're going to handle cell phones. That may be the policy we put in place by July 1, because we do need to spend some time. If we're gonna do this right and do it well, we need to there needs to be a community process. We've already started talking to our kids about it. So the high school, middle school, elementary advisory committees have already started talking to them about it, getting their feedback. So we've been already kind of doing some of that work. So yeah, there may be a 2-parter. We may have an initial policy that we create to satisfy the statutory requirement by July 1, and then we will have a more in-depth process to make sure we're doing a true full district policy and community involvement process.
I look forward to that discussion.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
I'll use my hand gavel. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.